Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting of the Halton Police Board to order for the 30th of October 2024. Before we get into the meeting, I would like to read our Indigenous territorial acknowledgement. The Halton Police Board acknowledges the lands on which we gather for this meeting as the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and the Anishinaabe. No matter our origins, our lives are intertwined through the shared earth beneath us, the water we consume, and the air that we breathe. As those responsible for the governance of the security of all who gather on this land we now call Halton, we are committed to a path of truth and reconciliation in our words and in our actions, and call on those watching this meeting to do the same. Madam Board Manager, do we have any regrets today?
No regrets, but Nav is on Zoom.
Okay, yes, Nav is on Zoom, so he will be participating. Hello, good day, Nav. Members of the board, are there any disclosures of pecuniary or conflict of interest to declare today? I'm not seeing any. Move along. You have your minutes from the meeting on September 25th circulated. They are in your package. I assume everybody's had a chance to read them. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I will look for a motion to approve the minutes as circulated. Nadine and Jane, comments, questions, errors, or omissions? All in favor? Those are approved. We have two presentations this morning. 2.1 presentation on intimate partner violence, offender management, and I'm going to call on, I think, Deputy Hill to start us off with that.
Sir, thank you.
Go ahead.
The video is 10 minutes and 30 seconds long. I think if you haven't seen it yet, you will be very impressed. This is directly created from our corporate comms team and the members of our intimate partner violence team. And just to back it up, basically what this is this was our official announcement to say that we are the first that I'm aware of in Ontario who have created an offender management team that is specific to intimate partner violence. And you only have to look towards Brampton that happened earlier this month. Savannah Kula, who was killed, murdered by a partner who was already out on different types of charges, that already had been violent towards this person. The point of this entire team is to prevent violence. So just this year alone, the team's already made, and these are people that are already on conditions. These are not new charges related to domestic violence or intimate partner violence. These are people that are on conditions already as a result of intimate partner violence. So they've already made 148 arrests. They've laid over 350 charges. In regards to high-risk offenders who we monitor, they've monitored 69 offenders. From the start of the project, we've actually made 359 arrests and laid over 600 charges. So what that says to you is those people were all effectively breaching conditions of their release related to intimate partner violence. That's the risk that we are constantly dealing with. At one point, prior to this, not now, but prior to this, we had over 100 people wanted for intimate partner violent offenses. Wanted out there. So that is, what we lose sleep over at night. I legitimately lose sleep, and when I see things like that happen in October, or in October in Brampton, we do not want that to happen, and we're willing and will do everything we can in our power to try and prevent that. So this video speaks to this. Part of the video is, speaking to what we do, and it's to let people know that we are there and we're putting the effort in. So it speaks for itself if you could watch for the 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Play, please.
Okay.
Even though our officers see it every day, we don't get desensitized to it, and we shouldn't.
I understand why people don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable and tragic, but it's not uncommon, and that's why we need to talk about it.
But the survivors know it's so much more than that. There's fear, you can be traumatized, terrorized, but there is hope.
It doesn't affect just one type of person. It affects people from all walks of life. Whether you're aware of it or not, it could be affecting someone that you love.
But we're here to change that.
In 2023, the Halton Regional Police Service received 3,559 reports of intimate partner violence, the equivalent of 10 reports a day. This resulted in 894 arrests and 2,059 criminal charges laid. These staggering figures contributed to the Halton region declaring IPV as an epidemic in 2023. With these figures increasing year over year, we knew that we had to reallocate resources fast to hold offenders accountable and protect survivors. That's why in 2023, the Halton Regional Police Service was the first police service in Ontario to pilot an offender management unit, specifically dedicated to intimate partner violence. Offender management units monitor individuals who have been charged with serious violent crimes, such as murder, attempted murder, robbery, firearms offenses, and sexual assault. 5 of our officers were exclusively tasked with monitoring IPV offenders who were out on bail to ensure they were complying with the court's release orders and locating and apprehending those who were breaching their conditions. In April 2025, we not only made the pilot permanent, to date, the IPV OMU team has made 330 arrests. Our ultimate goal is to keep survivors safe and hold offenders accountable, but it's also important that we continue earning the public's trust. We know that only around 20% of violence is reported, which means 80% of survivors aren't even calling us. For a number of reasons, they are suffering alone in silence. To anyone who's watching and may be suffering, I understand that safety might not feel within reach, but I assure you, our amazing officers and community partners care about you, and we're here to help you when you're ready.
My name is Staff Sergeant Barry Malsu. I oversee the Intimate Partner Violence Offender Management Unit here at Halton Police.
My name is Sergeant Scott Fatima, and I am a detective within the Intimate Partner Violence Offender Management Unit.
The offender management has several key roles. One of them is to manage our highest risk offenders with relation to intimate partner violence. The other key role is to actively look to locate and arrest wanted parties for intimate partner violence. We also monitor the most high-risk offenders through certain techniques like surveillance, as well as maintaining close contact with probation and parole.
So there's several different factors that may lead an individual to become an IPV perpetrator. Some of those factors may be substance abuse, the need for control, or learned behavior when they were a youth. So some common types of intimate partner violence offenses that I've seen, it could be a typical normal relationship, and there may be some verbal altercations, and then that may lead to assaultive behavior. But it's not just assaultive behavior, it could also lead to an IPV perpetrator trying to isolate a survivor, trying to take away financial ability to access funds. It could be trying to isolate them from their children, from their other family members. Those are the types of abuse that we've seen. When an IPV survivor comes forward to police with an occurrence, the uniformed officers within Halton Regional Police will conduct an investigation. If they feel that there's grounds to lay a charge, the perpetrator or the accused would be arrested. The case would be handed over to our Intimate Partner Violence Unit, and charges would be laid. Generally, the accused would be released either by an undertaking or by bail. The release would intact some conditions that are imposed to help protect the victim, which may include a variety of different conditions. The main ones being no contact with the victim and not to go anywhere where the victim is residing or working or known to be.
So within the unit, when we manage risk, we use a series of tools. The two main categories that we look at typically are how severe the violence is, and then the frequency of contact they have with police. From there, we apply that to build a profile that can affect the accused release conditions and how we manage that accused going forward. We use several different techniques to help our victims be safe within their own environment. One of those is actually going to their homes and doing a home visit. From there, we can offer other additional assistance, such as door stops, reinforcing windows, providing other types of advice to help secure their environment. We also work closely with our Victim Services Unit, where we can offer them a panic button where they can push it and get that quick response for help. In addition to those, we can also flag addresses so that our dispatch is very familiar with that address and it prompts a quick response. One of the units that we work most closely with is our victim service unit. This is to give a full, proper, circular center of care for our victims. They will provide extra care. They'll provide some financial assistance. In addition to that, one of the outside agencies that we rely on quite a bit is the Halton Women's Place. Now, they can provide shelter and other tools to help our victims as we collectively navigate through this difficult time in their lives.
Hi, I'm Jen Mullins. I'm a family court support worker with Halton Women's Place. Halton Women's Place is an agency dedicated to supporting women and their children fleeing from intimate partner violence situations to establish lives in the community free from violence safely. We work very closely with Halton Regional Police and Scott and his team in the OMU at the Intimate Partner Violence Unit. So typically, once police become involved, usually victim services in chargeable cases, victim services will become involved as well and provide their services. And at that point, the IPV detectives or victim services will usually make a referral to Halton Women's Place for us to become involved, in which case we can start assessing for services in what would be most helpful on a case-by-case basis.
Unfortunately, IPV offenses may be ongoing for a certain period of time prior to police getting involved into an investigation. So there may be a variety of different reasons or factors why an IPV survivor doesn't come forward to police initially, and that may be the long-term effects of what could happen to the actual perpetrator themselves, what could happen to the survivor's family, the stigma attached to a survivor, and as well as the potential for further assaults or further offenses to the survivor.
So our community partnerships with Halton Regional Police are so important in that oftentimes women are not quite comfortable with police in the initial stages, and they can come to us directly. We can have conversations around how best to support, and then we can facilitate from there connections with local police and victim services and any other community referrals that may be appropriate.
One of the tactics used by IPV perpetrators when they're starting to lose the dominance control is they'll make false promises. They'll guilt the survivors into using children as leverage. They will make false promises that this will never happen again. At the end of the day, these are just tactics used as manipulation by perpetrators, and victims should be aware that that's exactly what that is.
It's important for me to let anyone watching this know that Halton Women's Place is here to support you, whether you want some information around making a report with police or not, and we value confidentiality very highly and are here to support you if and when you're ready.
Our OM unit takes pride in a thorough investigation they do, but more importantly, being able to build those connections with the other community partners within the region to ensure that our victims are safe. At any given time in Halton region, there can be upwards of 80 to 100 people wanted for intimate partner violence within our community. The offender management unit is continuously on the streets looking to locate and arrest these wanted parties. However, that number continues to climb. There are several factors that impact this risk level, and there are several different ways that we can go about working collectively as a community to help reduce the risk to our victims.
To anyone who may be watching this feeling stuck in an unsafe situation, please know that there are a team of professionals here, both with the police service as well as Halton Women's Place, and we are available 24/7 through our crisis and information lines. Even if you have questions at this point or for when you're ready to, we will help you make a safe move.
Just to close it up, I just wanted to say really super proud of our members there, Scott and Barry, and our member from the Halton Women's Place, and Angela and Martina from Corporate Comms put a ton of time and effort into this. I think you'd agree it's an excellent, one of the best videos I've actually ever seen in relation to this. So super proud of them and appreciate it.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will say, as somebody that's produced my share of content in the past, that was an excellent technical as well as informative video. I would hope that you'd find ways to get that out far and wide. Certainly, we'll do our best through our website, the board's website, to make sure that it's highlighted as well. Members of the board, do you have any questions, Samira?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions, but just comments of appreciation. Thank you for making this video. It's very informative. I do sit on a board for a South Asian Women's Shelter, and I was wondering if this video can be translated in various languages as well.
You could definitely look into it for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Further comments or questions? Lisa?
Thank you very much for the video and for bringing another light to this very serious issue in our community. And I just wanted to say these are how to help people who, these indicators are how to help people who find themselves in the situation. There's a lot of work that we can still continue to do around preventing violence, intimate partner violence. And I just wanted to share that on November 1st, this Saturday, there is Hope in Every Step by Halton Women's Place, and it's gathering at Spencer Smith Park. It's a kickoff to Women Abuse Prevention Month with Halton Women's Place. And what I really appreciate about this particular event is that it oftentimes has many youth attend it, right? So we're always thinking about those upstream impacts, and to show the youth of today that intimate partner violence tomorrow is not acceptable in our community. So I encourage everyone to try to show up, come out, take those steps with survivors, with community partners, and you can check the website. It starts at 10 a.m. at Spencer Smith, and it's called Hope in Every Step.
We will have members attending as well.
Further comments or questions? Fred?
That was fantastic. Really impressive in both in the initiative, the content, and the way it was put together. Even I could understand it. Thank you. A couple of questions. Of the 300 arrests made by the offender management unit, how many of those roughly would be attributed to breach of release conditions?
Predominantly all of them. I can get the exact stats. That's basically what it is they're looking for
prolific reoffenders.
They're looking for reoffenders.
What stream in the broader justice system or health system can those reoffenders be diverted to reduce the risk factors? And then how can that happen? Do you know what I mean? Trying to go upstream of the problem.
And this is something that, when we talk about the community safety well-being model, that is exactly what we're trying to get to. Instead of being reactionary and trying to be preventative in this component, is how do we prevent this? And that's why you'll see places like Halton Women's Place going into the schools, trying to educate people, to break that cycle of violence perhaps that people are growing up with, to educate, predominantly men, on how to have healthy relationships and not go down this road. So that's something that we are consistently working on. We have a hub model in Halton as well. There's actually an event coming up that I'll be speaking at in regards to that, but we have a Halton hub model that talks to and speaks to how we get all of these groups together for that holistic response. And part of it is places like Thrive, for example, gives counseling. Right. Typically when someone has gone through the first offense and trying to prevent reports. The challenge is getting people before they commit an offense. So there's the education component, trying to get people young, but it's getting the people that are maybe older, like me, and how do you get to them before it builds up? And there's not a lot out there or ways to stream people towards that if they don't choose to do that. That's some of the ongoing challenges with doing this.
Is there a way where repeat offenders, so almost 300 arrests of people reaching their release conditions, can the courts not direct counseling in that regard?
They do, and that's where Thrive becomes a part of it. There is different counseling that they will enforce. So there is that component to it for sure. The unfortunate part is these people that are not listening.
Right.
And those are the ones that, like, when we talk about the high-risk ones, there's a whole scale that goes to how you're identified as high risk, but those are the people that counseling is not getting to, obviously. So it's an ongoing challenge of doing that.
My question is, so, like, someone goes into the system and then the court say that they have to go to counseling, is that mandatory or can they skip that? Like, is it?
No, it's mandatory if you don't go. If they make it a condition, then you're required to go.
And then, like, my thing is like, just, it's very unfortunate because people that are in abusive relationships, right? Like, I grew up in that environment. I'm just saying that's from that environment prior to that, right? And it is a sickness. But the sad thing is when you see all of these women, if you aren't financially stable, it doesn't matter where, like, and I love this video, but if you have the fear and you're not financially stable, trying to get out and go and figure out how to do this, and I appreciate all the hard work you put into it, but it's so difficult to get those women to move forward, because if they could, they would, right? But when you don't have the ability to have finance, it's very difficult to move forward and get out of that.
Yeah, and I hope that didn't suggest that we thought that was simple. I mean, the reality is when people that are in high-risk relationships, they're at most dangers. They're at the most danger to themselves of when they try and leave.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate reality. That's why this is such a complicated issue, because you have so many different things that are at play, finances. That's why when Scott was talking about basically coercive control, that's how these people do this. They control every aspect of your life. If you do this, I'm going to take the kids. If you do this, you're not going to have any money. And then people, unfortunately, get to the point where, okay, well, I can't do anything because this other side right now looks worse. You know, that's why we saw that the worst part of it during the pandemic, that people were trapped inside with their abusers and couldn't get anywhere. And it was, how do you help people like that? This is only one piece of a very, very complicated problem. And it's to be clear, we know that it is. That's why only 20% of people report to us. And quite honestly, I think that a lot of that is they report when they're at the point of crisis and there's just no other way out. Something bad has already happened, and now there's just nowhere to turn. But we're very aware there's a ton of people that are sitting and they're going through this all the time and just don't feel like they can cope. And that's how do we get to those people. And that's why this is going to be a constant battle that we're going to keep engaging in until we can figure out how to get those people those resources. I often say, like, policing is only one part of it. I don't really care if people necessarily come to the police. All I care is if they go through some pathway to get help. And if it involves us or doesn't involve us, as long as they're good taking a pathway to get help, that's all I care about.
The fear is so real, right, obviously. Yeah. But even when you're talking about the control issue, I mean, it's different, but human trafficking is, I mean, it's control, it's manipulation. Yeah.
100% manipulation. And even with the HT, you've heard me say before, we've had to go to victims, and sometimes you almost have to convince the person that they're a victim. Mm-hmm. They don't know that they are, because they've gotten so manipulated. They think that they're in some sort of relationship or it's become normal. And you have to point out, well, no, this is not. You know, that's how tough this is. And that's how, you know, manipulative these abusers are. And they can play those mind tricks on you and convince you that this is all normal. Or, don't worry, this is never going to happen again. Until it does again. So no, please don't take this as we think this is simple. We're very, very unfortunate. And again, pointing towards what just happened in October. The person that was already accused, as I understand it, of shooting at this person. You know, so that's the most tragic of the ending. It shows how dangerous this is.
I appreciate all your hard work on. I'm just saying it's so sadly sad.
Ingrid, and then Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation and the video. It certainly adds to our awareness, and we know that it is problematic throughout Canada, throughout the world, sadly. And it does help us to challenge some of our own assumptions in terms of what's happening and how the matters are being dealt with. The question I have is, when the victim goes to the shelter, obviously that's a temporary arrangement. And how does one decide in terms of the lengths of time that the victim will receive the support, and then what? During that period, they are certainly well cared for, and presumably the children as well. But what happens after that? Do they have to make a decision in terms of going back to their home where the abuser is?
The point is, I mean, the unfortunate fact is Halton Women's Place is always full. They are always at capacity. And that just goes to show you how many people are trying to get help. And when they're in there, you know, they have their own support systems that are in there where they're trying to help you get to, you know, another place of safety, another financial way of you know, supporting yourself so you don't have to go back to your abuser. And, you know, I recently spoke at an event with Samira from Humwee, of who she's speaking of, and even in that community, it's even more so. In one way where we're talking, some of the women in the room were saying, I don't even know what my finances are, or speaking to, I don't even know what my own PIN number is. So how do you get out? And it's working through and connecting you to other social services that are out there. Because the reality is the police, we're only one piece of this. And our victim services will go to heaven, to the heavens to support you, and there's other potentials of finances that we can assist with, those types of things, but it's all short term. And that's why this is so challenging. So Halton Women's Place will have that challenge of people will be in there and they can't leave because they have nowhere to go. So that's why it has to be a whole sector. Everybody has to be taking a part of this. Because these is as silos, we only have one piece of the answer. So I don't have an easy answer for that because that's part of the complexity of this. Is that what the person will feel like is, well, I have nowhere else to go, so what do I do now?
And we have an advantage here in Halton region. We have many services that will support the cause, but imagine in some of the remote areas, where do people go and how are they cared for?
How do they even know that there's something there? I mean, that, you know, I know sometimes I harp about this, but unfortunately, an intimate part of violence is still something that nobody wants to talk about, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you speak about how is this good video going to be seen. It's an amazing video, but most people won't watch it because they don't want to watch it.
Sure.
So how do you get that out there? That's why you constantly, I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but there's somebody that's going to be watching or going to get wind of it. It's at least going to give them something to see that, okay, there is at least something. But you're right, in more isolated communities or different communities with different cultural backgrounds and norms, they probably don't see any way out.
Probably don't have an offender management unit in many police services either.
I think, to my knowledge, we're the only ones.
Really?
Well, thank you for what you're doing.
Specific to the intimate part of violence, we're the only ones.
I just want to add one thing just to contribute to that answer. So I spent a number of years before I joined the police board as the president of the Housing Corporation. I do know that our public housing within the Halton region, I believe it's province-wide through provincial legislation, there is a priority given, and it's the first priority for the allocation of public housing RGI units to victims of IPV. And so while we are constrained based on the availability of those units, that is an option for survivors to obtain permanent or semi-permanent housing options, is to work through the Victim Services Unit, but also through the region public housing folks at Halton Housing Corporation to get on that list so that they are able to get that fast-track service. And again, that's a provincially legislated initiative. Chief, you're up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to all the issues that people spoke to, and Jane and Jeff and others, that on top of all this is the justice system, which really holds people not very accountable. There's not a lot of deterrent for some of the behavior, and when we have declared different things as an epidemic, and IPVU is one of them, and auto theft is one of them. We had an epidemic called COVID a few years ago. Hospitals did all sorts of different things to take on that burden, and our justice system and our correction system has to adjust so that they can hold people accountable for some of their actions, which they don't typically do. We have a great relationship with Halton Women's Place. When we were talking about about how the children are looked after, there were actually members of our service, and because the relationship is so good, who went to Halton Women's Place a few years ago and built the children's room in one part of that facility. But they do a great amount of work, but they also are limited by space, so it's another area where we look at investing locally in that facility for almost always women in these situations, and they're terrifying situations that these people are dealing with. And I had, I would say years ago, dealing with bail reform, and it was probably about 12 years ago, a Chief Justice say to me that the police just put too many conditions on people because we wanted to breach them. And I said, no, it's the justices and the JPs that are putting the conditions on them because they're trying to protect them. So if we're arresting people, and my point is, when Jeff and I were with the Premier and the Solicitor General and Attorney General a week or so ago, we talked about this Offender Management Unit project being something unique here in Halton. And I mean, certainly Attorney General Downey conceded, and not in a bad way, that this causes issues for the justice system. Because if we weren't arresting these 300 people and laying 1,200 charges, it would be less work for the courts, and you know what, that's not our job. We'll put the people before the courts to keep victims safe, and that's exactly what this unit's doing, and then the justice system is going to have to change to adjust to these epidemics that we're seeing.
Any other comments from the board? Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great effort. I would suggest, I'm sure probably the department is already involved with different ethnic groups and especially the religious places. And as we mentioned earlier, that, you know, most of the time people are not aware, like especially in terms of the women, they don't have the information, like what are my rights and where can I get the help and stuff. So I would suggest that if we can get them more involved, especially you know, these ethnic religious organizations. They could be a great help to us also in terms of preventing these kind of incidents. So it's like a continuous effort to educate them and you know, give the awareness to different communities. As you mentioned earlier, because you know, different communities have their social norms and ethnic values, and so they look at stuff. And most of the time, these, you know, especially the women's side, they are so dependent on you know, culturally and especially social pressure that they need more awareness. So I would suggest that if we can, you know, have more and more awareness session with these communities, that would be helpful too.
And I appreciate it, you're definitely right. What I would put back is if you can open any of those doors, I'll go anywhere and talk about this. There's nowhere I won't go.
Are you done, Nadeem? Yeah, good, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, just I have a couple things. First of all, just I didn't know this, that Jane had mentioned, I don't know the details, she said she has some background in this, but I do too. I grew up in a domestic violence situation, and I recall distinctly the impact that the financial piece had in that particular case. It was significant, and it wasn't until I became financially viable that I was able to get my mother out of that circumstance, so I'm very familiar with those circumstances. But what I can tell you is that you talked about the older generation, like I won't say people your age, but people who are maybe a little older, maybe my age. I think that probably part of it is the belief that nobody's going to listen, because that was really my mother's problem. Really listen, the guy's always right? And my father was a big man in town, and so that couldn't be a possible situation. So I think that you hit the nail on the head when you talk about how to get to that particular group, because I'm not sure that they're necessarily, A, believing that they're in an abusive situation, or B, that anybody's going to care. And so this video really, really, I think, sells that message very clearly. So that's number one. Number two, I really hope you'll take this to council. I would suggest you do that we set you up with a presentation to Regional Council, because those council members can help spread this information out into the community. I think that'd be a great step. So maybe Paul and you could figure out a time when we can have you do a presentation. It's a great follow-up to the epidemic presentation. Perhaps some of the local councils will do that as well, because it's a great way to disseminate information in the community through councillors' newsletters and just through, councillors sharing resources out there in the community. And the other one is libraries. Libraries have become a social service. They're not just books and magazines and computers anymore. They're about where people go when they have no place to go during the day or when they're trying to escape. And so I would suggest talking to librarians about this. Go to the 4 library systems in Halton Region, get them the video, get them put them on their website, and talk to them, because often cases librarians have become this really interesting first line of defense when it comes to social issues. I know I chair the Halton or the Oakville Public Library, and this is something we talk about all the time. We've actually enshrined it right in our strategic plan, that we recognize our place in the community as being that almost that first level of connection with those folks going forward. So those are my suggestions as well.
I appreciate that.
And I just want to say this in closing, and then we'll move on to our next event. But I just want to say thank you to you, Jeff. I know it's a team effort, but every team has a leader, and I know that this has been a huge piece of your mandate here. And I mean, that shows very clearly every time I see you doing one of these initiatives. I know that it's not just a matter of your job, but you clearly believe very strongly in this. And so I want to congratulate you and thank you. And please pass that on to the whole team that's involved in this, because this is not an easy task to deal with. I can't thank you enough for the initiatives that you've taken and the team that you've led through this process. It's been truly remarkable, so thank you for this. And frankly, you look really good on camera.
Hair looks good there, didn't it?
It really looked good.
That was good hair day.
I'd like to
Communications team is good.
I'd like to share your makeup artist, because it made you look pretty darn good. Chief, did you have a final word?
No, I think it was a fantastic video. The first time I saw it, I said to Jeff, we need to get this to the board.
You really do.
It is out already socially.
You really do.
But the more we can disseminate it, distribute it, it's a little long to play in movie theaters, but there's probably a lot of different venues that we could get these to, so thank you.
There'll be lots of opportunities, and one of the things I will say, just put my technical hat on for a second, is that it's watchable. A lot of these videos that are created, you turn out within minutes. It's done in such whoever your videographer is, I want to pat them on the back, because it's a really great job in producing something that is actually watchable, because these things are very hard to produce and actually keep people engaged. The use of lighting, the use of the cutaways, everything was really very masterful, and that comes after 45 years working in that industry. So it's well done.
No, thank you. And I know Angela's here, the rest of the team isn't, but certainly the board and the service has invested in corporate communications over the last few years, and you'll see some continuing changes there. We'll talk about some in camera. We will have our new senior corporate communications specialist here next week, and the team is really excited about moving forward and taking this to a whole new level where now they can do and produce videos like this, which is fantastic for the service. So thank you.
You're knocking it out of the park. I just want to say that Paul and his team, I mean, my gosh, what a great job you guys are doing. I don't know everybody in the room, but I know I keep thanking the people at the top of the food chain, but certainly when I praise you guys, I'm basically that should be conveyed to everybody on your team, and I like to meet them so I can shake their hands as well and thank them for
It's actually Angela right there. Had a huge part of this right there.
Well done. Thank you, Angela. We'll remember your name again. Okay, Samira has a last, hopefully?
Yes. Just one comment, and that is about, I know a lot of people will be watching perhaps this part of the, broadcast for our meeting. And I just want the community to know that at the region of Halton, we do have financial assistance available. We have employment assistance available. And personally, I've had the honor of connecting a lot of such women whom I worked with, the Asian Women's Shelter, to these services at the region, and they've all had great success getting back on their feet. So I know there was mention of financial assistance, so I just want to get that information out there at this appropriate time. And also want to just highlight the role an individual plays in bringing down intimate partner violence numbers, because each of us have a personal responsibility to be a sister's keeper, let's just say that. Look around you and see, look at the signs, learn about how you can identify someone who is going through IPV. I know the police are doing a great job. I know we have services available through the region of Halton. We at the board are doing our best to make sure we are equipping our forces and our services with the best tools to get the numbers lowered. But the individual too has a responsibility as a neighbor to each other. And I feel like we just call that friend who hasn't been around showing up lately. How are you doing? What is going on? I feel like that can make a big difference. Statistically, women are the ones who face a lot of the IPV. So as a woman myself, my call out to my sisters who are watching is that please be your sister's keeper. Look around yourself and check it on each other, because sometimes that one call will save a life. Thank you.
Technical question to our IT team. I don't see our remote colleague on screen. Will I know if he puts his hand up? Are you going to watch for that?
Video's off.
Oh, there you go.
Are you okay now?
Yeah,
I want to make
good.
sure that I'm not. I couldn't see you on screen. I just want to make sure that you weren't waving furiously, looking to get my attention.
No, I appreciate you calling out. I just saw my big picture on only one on the screen, so I didn't want to bore you guys. So I was here but off camera. So.
Okay, well then I'll know that you'll pop on. Just pop on when you want to be. Just make sure I know that you want to be part of the conversation. Thanks. Okay. Just last time, well done. Thank you for bringing this to us. Thanks for slipping it in. I know it was a last-minute addition to the agenda, but I'm glad that you did. Moving on to 2.2. This is our I won't say that this is a hard act to follow, but I mean, it's the budget is our main purpose for today's board meeting. So I'm going to call for the 2026 board budget presentation. Chief, are you starting us off? Or?
I will start this off, and Carrie and I are going to share the presentation part, and of course, all three deputies are here to fill in different amounts of detail as required.
This year.
We're just waiting for the presentation to be pulled up.
I recognize where's the PowerPoint look on people's faces? That picture was to calm everybody before we get into the budget presentation. The gentle waves and the green. Yeah.
Great, thank
Is
you.
it working?
It did. I feel very calm.
Great, thank you. No, it's certainly an honor annually to go through our budget process and to ultimately come to today's board meeting to do the formal public presentation of the 2026 budget. I think it's only my 27th budget or my 13th since I've been back here with the board. So Chair and I have done all 13 of those together. You'll see some similarities in this presentation and some differences because the pressures and the different factors that we're dealing with change from year to year. But there are some consistent things. We certainly want to have a look at the current policing environment we're working in. And as you know, those are changing constantly. The pressures of things like IPVU and having to have even the offender management type of unit or the investments in corporate communications. I can tell you at a very high level, we had 2 shootings last night in 2 of our different municipalities. And those are things that if we had 2 shootings in Halton 10 or 20 years ago, we would be shocked. Not so much now. And I can't get into details publicly about those, but we can talk a little bit about them later on. We want to focus on the board's strategic plan and budget priorities that are contained within that strategic plan, and on some of the, as I mentioned, budget pressures and trends. We will go through the budget process, both Carrie and I, and we'll sort of split the presentation, so I'll begin it with some of the basics of the generalities, and when we get into some of the technical aspects of capital budget and different things, Carrie will take over at different points during the presentation. We have discussed with the board options. For this year, it's always a little bit different. This year, as you know, we started out with a guideline from regional government, which was not based on our projections from the year before. And thank you to the chair and to others who presented that discussion at regional council prior to this point, which resulted in our guideline being increased to 8.22%. The 8.22% being based on what our projection was for 2026 when we did the 2025 budget. Of course, that 8.22 was based on 32 sworn officers and 16 civilians. So as other pressures have taken place over this year and in previous years, JEPI process being one of them, staffing issues being another, we see that some of that 8.22 is consumed by other parts of the budget. So it brings us down to being able to hire less than what the projection was. And we'll talk about that, and we'll present to the board a couple of options around those numbers. We'll talk about the capital budget and some options for that moving forward. Year after year, we have seen, and it's because in one way, and often to Ingrid's questions about staffing and are we able to hire the number of officers and civilians we add to our complement each year. And as we get closer to doing that, and this year we're very close to being at full strength, and also deal with some of the other in-year budget pressures, year over year we find less of a surplus at the end of the year. And because of the way that our budgets have historically been done here for the Halton Regional Police Service through the region, we've had to rely on those surpluses to fund our capital projects and programs. So when we're looking at major capital projects, and actually all of us here at the front table were able to tour the new facility up on Steeles Avenue earlier this week. I was so pleasantly surprised that it is much larger inside than it looks from outside, and it will be a fantastic facility. But that facility, which is around a quarter the size of this headquarters, is almost the cost of this headquarters. Because of it being post-COVID pricing. And we will be absorbing the cost of that facility until, I believe, 2050 in the operating budget. So Carrie working with us and bringing some fresh ideas to the table and some different ways of looking at things, we will be proposing what we will refer to as a capital levy at one point during the presentation. That's for future years and for our projections. There are budget risks. There are risks that some funding may evaporate or decrease. I would say after our meeting last week, there is also the possibility that some provincial funding may increase. And we can talk a little bit about that later on. Some of it was only discussion. Some of it is a grant which will become available for what the province is referring to as surge funding, when police services have to deal with exceptional or extraordinary circumstances of some type, with the definition a little bit vague at this point, but there may be some funding available to different services for issues that they're dealing with. And there may be an opportunity where the province may increase court security and prisoner transportation funding, because it was pointed out that that funding envelope of $125 million has been the same for the last 6 to 10 years. And of course, the dollar is worth a little less each year with inflation. And ultimately, when the courthouse is finally built, square footage yet to be determined, but it will be a large court facility. We will be responsible for the security of that building. So in those out years, probably 5 years from now, there will be some additional funding as a result of having the facility that we need. We'll look at the 2027 to 2030 budget forecast with some assumptions built into that, and Carrie will go through some of those, and then we'll get to the budget recommendations. Certainly, speaking of the current policing environment, there are a number of things that, as the board is aware, either in your civilian positions or your municipal and regional council positions, you'll hear about a lot of the different trends that we're dealing with. This is not just Halton. Guns and gangs are alive and well. Firearm offenses are occurring as I mentioned, shockingly too, just last night, cybercrime is certainly on the increase. I will continue to position that cybercrime is in fact a federal issue, and we're hoping that there may be some movement there. I'll just mention in passing, the federal government, I think surprised everybody. I think it was the Minister of Finance who came out and announced that there will be a new financial investigative agency. And even people within the RCMP doing money laundering were unaware that that was happening. So I'm not sure how they will come up with a completely separate organization. That may take years as well. At least they're looking at the money laundering and some of the cryptocurrency issues in a different way, but I think the RCMP are going to have to be involved in the enforcement side of that, at least in my view. Intimate partner violence, we all know all too well, and the timing of today's presentation couldn't have been better to highlight that. Hate-related crimes, auto theft is down. Yes, it's down about 23% so far this year. It was down 18% only in the last 6 months of last year. So the first 6 months of 2024, it was actually the same as 2023, and then there was a drop in the last 6 months. So that's great. We're, as far as our goals in the strategic plan, hoping to reduce auto theft by 50% within the life of the plan. I have no doubt that we will get there. But we're down 50% on a number that was just 4 or 5 years ago, up by 300%. So, it's going to be great if we reduce auto theft by 50%, but it's still going to be substantially higher than it was. So my point is there are still a lot of auto thefts happening. It's not shocking to have 3 or 4 in a 24-hour period. Often they will be probably the same group doing them, because you'll notice there's 3 cars stolen in Burlington overnight or 3 cars stolen in Oakville overnight. So they are certainly still coming into our municipality, and I would say generally those auto thefts, home invasions, robberies of jewelry stores are being committed largely by individuals that are coming from outside of Halton to target a target-rich environment here in some ways. We've just on the side had some discussions with the provincial government last week about that and the usefulness of a number of additional ALPR types of units, which could be stationary in different parts of Halton to capture and identify stolen vehicles coming into and leaving Halton, which would be a great advantage to us. So I think that's something that we can probably count on the provincial government also doing as well. And of course, we have a large number of mental health calls. We're probably still around, and this is probably close to a national average for most police services, only about 25%, with all the crimes that we do have happening, only about 25% of what police services deal with are criminal in nature. About 75% are societal issues, mental health, alcohol and drug addiction, homelessness. Homelessness is a little bit different here. We are fortunate in many ways. I think the region of Halton at our Community Safety and Wellbeing meeting here a couple of weeks ago, and Kevin was with me, and there were something like 76 what they would call encampments that they responded to so far in 2025. But most of those encampments are 1 or 2 individuals here. We have been very fortunate not to have large-scale types of encampments that some of our other jurisdictions in Ontario see. We do not have a downtown Hamilton, for example. We don't have a downtown London. I'm thankful for both of those facts. But mental health and addiction is still an issue for us here. But the region here is also incredible in the resources they put into homelessness. And their social workers and different people that respond to that, in addition to our frontline officers. We always look at, and we've done this annually, and certainly the board, as we can move forward with decisions on the actual presentation to Regional Council, we always do present this. We have been first in most measures over the past number of years. We usually just look at the last 3 or 4. We have, I would say that in overall weighted clearance rate, our clearance rate is up so far this year, which I'm happy with. It had dropped a little bit in the last year or year and a half. So I would expect that to be higher when we report on overall clearance rate at the end of 2025. The only reason we don't have staff per population and cost per capita is those numbers and statistics are not immediately available through resources that they used to be. I could extrapolate and say I believe we will be first in both of those categories, and by quite a long way, especially if we look at the Big 12. You will recall, members of the board, over the past couple of years, we have talked about that, and we can usually compare ourselves to the next lowest staff per population or cost per capita service, whether that was York sometimes or Waterloo sometimes. And I was able to say we would have to hire 60 additional officers to get to the level of staffing that Police Service X has, or the cost per capita that Police Service Y has. We just can't do that. We may be able to by the 19th if we look at the Big 12, but we will not be hiring that many. And of course, all of those services are also expanding staffing. So it's reasonable to say we will continue to be first in those categories. On the strategic plan, of course, we want to have that achievement of the highest weighted clearance rate among our comparator police services. Those are usually the Big 12. Achievement of 80% or better community satisfaction with the HRPS. That will be measured when the board does its next community survey. Improved HRPS, member wellness, job satisfaction, and engagement, and the board is now just starting to engage a firm to do that survey. Reduced per capita, I spoke briefly about the 50% reduction in auto theft. I do strongly believe that we will hit that number within the life of the strategic plan. And of course, increased enforcement in all the areas, the priority areas of policing that we discussed during the development of the strategic plan with Fred and the chair and the whole board coming up with things where sometimes the measure of success is not reduction. So using intimate partner violence as an example, normally police service would say we'd like to reduce that. That's an artificial measure because I think if we know that 80% of IPVU is not reported, our success is actually if it increases and we help more victims or more people come forward when they experience hate crime. Hate crime is going up and down for us, depending on what's usually going on in other parts of the world in the last couple of years, whether it's not so much Russia and the Ukraine, but with Israel and Hamas and Gaza. So we certainly have experienced more in the way of protests when it comes to sort of global protests. And in our particular area, primarily that's been Palestinian movement or Palestinian youth or youth for Palestine, or using that as the reason to protest. But we've certainly seen that through all of our municipalities. We will always have, we know that Halton will continue, particularly Milton, will continue to be one of the fastest growing municipalities in Canada, if not the fastest. Some of those numbers are sort of being estimated differently, I think, depending on what's actually required and what municipalities are actually able to deliver on. But we do know that growth is going to be significant, both in, I would say, in the north parts of Oakville and planned development around Trafalgar and Highway 5, and whether there's 50 or 100-story buildings. I'm not sure which it's going to be yet, but and driving through Milton surprises me every time I go up there. Even just this week, driving through parts of Milton to get to that building on Steeles Avenue. And talking with Mike McMullen that day, looking across the road at the empty fields, which are proposed development for very large scale, not surprisingly, warehouses, because what's going to happen with the modal and all the other things that are going to impact, particularly the town of Milton.
I want to be clear. I don't mean to try to be humorous about it, but I want to be very clear, there are no 100-story buildings being proposed for Oakville. I know that David Lee is probably running furiously at Metroland right now, but there are no 100-story buildings. Repeat, full stop, and Oakville. That was the chief's attempt at humor.
David, that was humor. Only 95.
My stress level from that flying went way up just from that one moment.
We could flip back to the ocean scene.
100 stories high.
Complexities of crimes, and we've talked about this in a number of different areas, but one really good example is technology. We're dealing with the federal government, all of us as police services and as Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and Canadian Association. The complexities of technology and the encryption of devices and the lack of ability to get into some devices and the need for legislation to allow for it, and then to have the equipment to do it. We'll deal with one in-camera item, which is very confidential, but around the encrypted devices and the interception of communication. And we cannot investigate a crime these days, hardly ever, without technology and phones and different devices and GPS vehicles and things coming into play. And not only are they useful in some cases, but even when they're not, either the Crown or the defense want us to do all that work. And that drives back trial dates where we're faced with different deadlines and have to do things. I think some of you have seen our new cybercrime area here, which is, well positioned and well staffed to do a number of things, but we're still under a tremendous burden of work to get to the devices and the technology and things that we need to do, just as one example of complexity. We have the ongoing impacts of collective bargaining. Of course, those settlements were fair and they were good for our members, and they would not have ended up in any other way through arbitration or anything else, in my view. It's just the way that the cost of policing and the cost of living has driven things across the province. And I would throw in, that's not just policing, that's also firefighting. That's also ultimately going to be paramedic costs proportionately. And I think the regional council will see that the Halton EMS budget is in line with, or perhaps a little bit higher than our budget is when that's presented this year. And some of that is driven as well by the impact of capital. Utilization of overtime and part-time wages. Overtime has been an issue in policing for years. We have seen a trend in policing, I think across Canada, but certainly among our GTA partners. I've texted, emailed with the Chief of Waterloo, Hamilton, Niagara, Peel, Durham, York. Everyone is experiencing overtime increasing year over year. I believe some of that is because of absences in the workforce, and some of that being stress-related, PTSD-related, absences due to workplace injuries, some physical, some not, and legislation which supports officers in some of those situations with some legislation. But we do deal with, I believe, around 50 officers. We have come up with the exact number who are unable to come to work, and some of those absences do result in overtime. Sometimes overtime is less expensive than full-time members, depending how it's used, but the overall cost of overtime is significant. Expanding technology, we've talked about this before, and certainly software support costs and the cost of licensing as opposed to basically purchasing a system 10 years ago and having a little bit of maintenance, and now there's a licensing fee for 1,200 people or for X number of people that need to have access to those systems. There are and there have been increasing costs for compliance with the CSPA. We'll provide some examples a little bit later. Some of them are around training. Some of them are around equipment. Some of them are a combination of the two. For example, the $800,000 figure that we've used just for the cost of ammunition for the initial training of officers on the C8 carbine rifles. So there are a number of impacts, and I believe unintended or not thought of completely through when that act was put in place, who would pay for some of those things. Fiscal limitations. We do have limited reserves this year because we have staffed up, as the board has certainly expected us to do when we received the funding envelope to add additional sworn and civilian staff this year. And we need to hire those people because we legitimately need them. The closer we get to full staffing throughout the year, the less reserve funds there are at the end. And again, that's a reason why we need to look at a different and more inventive way to fund our capital projects moving forward. And our initial survey indicates from different services that we've been able to collect budget information from so far that they range up to 12.83. And one might be around that without including some of their capital levy expenses, which they must address in a different way. The budget priorities. We want to maintain service levels. We'd like to increase service levels, but really as the region continues to grow, maintaining service levels is where we need to be. And compensation increases from the contract adjustments and job evaluations. And Jeppy had a huge impact on us. Because we're discussing this publicly here today, the job evaluation process for our regular members, which would represent in the HRPA around 300 or 320 civilian members. The total compensation adjustments for Jeppy were significant, well over $1 million, and then impacted year over year. And then those dollars further impact cost of overtime, cost of temporary employee salary rates, and the cost of owners' contributions, just to name a few, but they are significant. We talked about technology and for public safety, expanding positions to maximize outcomes, but operationalizing the new one district. We've got those things built into the budget from a capital perspective for furniture and a number of different things which will be delivered separate from the actual building of that facility and compliance with the CSPA. Just a couple of specific examples there. Training requirements does impact on overtime and meeting strength on our platoons. So when we need to remove officers from our frontline shifts, for example, or from our investigative areas, and they need to come here and train for 2, 3, or 4 days, they're lost to the platoon. Our managers, staff sergeants generally, can plan for a lot of that and provide less vacation time or less time off, or word we use. There's not mandatory time, but discretionary time off. There's a balance there. Our frontline members need time off. They absolutely need their vacation. Vacation is sort of the highest level of time off. And of course, there is statutory time, and there is crew time if you're working the uniform shifts, the 104 hours a year that officers work in excess of 2,080 is taken as time off. Sometimes it's hard to get that time off, and our supervisors have to balance that. The young officer that needs time off for the wedding or whatever it might be, there's always exceptional circumstances, but time off is a wellness issue as well, but it can impact us on the overtime side. Just a simple example, a staff sergeant may give an additional 2 people off on a Friday night shift, and then at the last minute, a couple of people are sick or unable to come to work, and then it becomes a staffing issue at that point, and hard to call the people back that have been granted the time off. Body armor and carriers, certainly. We had our presenter here today, but the star of the presentation of the board on body armor, thank you for that investment for the safety of our frontline members. But it is significant as a cost of the CSPA, because a large part of that is the high impact panels for those vests, not just the vests. But when I see our officers, and I saw a number of our 30 or 31 new recruits outside yesterday morning when we all went through a fire alarm here at headquarters, our equipment is, I believe, second to none. And it certainly is a source of pride for myself and the executive team to see the level and the quality of equipment that our members have. So thank you to the board and to the region for those expenditures. mental health crisis training is just an example where you'll see an item in the budget for $400,000 just to buy 3D goggles to do mental health crisis training, which is required by the CSPA and is probably the cheapest way to do that. And I think I will now turn the next part of the presentation over to Carrie.
Thanks, Chief.
Not fair.
So this slide provides a bit of an overview of the key budget activities that we've completed to date and the progress that we've made in towards aligning with our financial targets. So we began with staffing expand requests of 51 sworn and 30 civilian positions, a total of 81. Through detailed review and prioritization, this has been reduced to 24 roles in the current proposal. On the capital side, the initial submission totaled $20.5 million. We've refined that down to stay within sustainable financing levels. We're also proposing, as the Chief mentioned, a capital levy in the forecast years to help fund these ongoing capital needs, which you will hear about again throughout the presentation. A lot of work has gone on to tightening requests, managing affordability, and preparing balanced options for you to review today. We are now going to spend the next few slides walking you through 5 budget options. Each option builds on our 2025 approved budget of $233 million and includes base budget requirements driven by increases in compensation and other operating costs. In July, Regional Council had proposed a year-over-year budget change of 4.3%. Our base increase is in fact higher than that, whereby in order to come in at that 4.3% target, a reduction in our current budget of $7.1 million would be required. As majority of our budget is staffing and compensation costs, to achieve this target, a reduction in current staffing of 45 to 65 frontline positions would be required. A 4.3% increase would result in a reduction in our current levels of service and would impact our ability to deliver on our strategic priorities. This option is not supported, responsible, or attainable given the operational pressures we face, and it would compromise both service quality and outcomes. Moving to option 2, which is a budget target of 8.22%. Similar to the first option, this builds on our 2025 budget of $233 million, and again, includes 2026 base budget increases related to compensation and benefits, IT software maintenance, and expenses such as facilities and fleet costs, all to maintain our current service levels. In addition, option 2 at 8.22% provides funding for 20 sworn and 4 civilian expand positions. We will now go into more detail on the 8.22% over the next few slides. This slide outlines the expand positions proposed within the 8.22% increase. It is comprised of 20 sworn positions for the front line and 4 civilian positions in our communications and finance bureaus. We have considered the recruitment timing of these new roles and phased them into the 2026 budget as appropriate. As mentioned, the base budget increase is being driven by increases in compensation and benefits that equates to 5.87% of the 8.22% increase, and other increases such as IT software maintenance, facilities and fleet operating costs, and capital financing charges. The expand portion, as described on the previous slide, is only 0.66% of the 8.22% increase. Similar to other services, the vast majority of our operating budget is tied to people, salaries and benefits for over 800 sworn and nearly 400 civilian authorized positions. This reflects the nature of policing as a people-driven service, where our ability to deliver on community safety depends on having the right people in the right roles at the right time. The remaining portion of the operating budget covers essential supports that enable our members to do their jobs safely and effectively. Things like technology and software, facility operating costs, uniforms and training, as well as fuel and maintenance of our fleet. We also continue to make important investments in our capital program through the operating budget, ensuring we can maintain and modernize our assets, technology, and infrastructure. You'll see later in the presentation when we discuss in detail the four-year forecast that the demand on our capital program continues to grow, and we'll be highlighting where additional funding will be needed to keep pace. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Chief to continue with the next part of the presentation and some additional options.
Thanks, Terry. I will talk briefly about the options, 3, 4, and 5, and I know the board has this in their package. We certainly are appreciative of the 8.22%, as our guideline as regional council adjusted it to that level. And we recognize budget pressures for the board and certainly for regional council. But there are two other priority areas that we do want to discuss with the board. One is what we're calling public safety unit as opposed to public order unit. And the second option, which I'll get to in just a couple of minutes, would be what would it look like if we increase from the level of staffing for 20 additional sworn officers, which are in the 8.22%, up to 32, which was the number projected in the projection from the year before. So on this slide, we were looking at the cost of the public order unit. Almost all of this is equipment to equip a public order unit, to start a small public order unit here in Halton. The board will recognize that right now, if we needed public order, we would have to rely on another service. The issue with that, and other services are great, and we are providing assistance to other services in different ways as well, is the availability of those units from time to time. When we are facing different issues, whether it's Canada Day, which happens in every jurisdiction the same day, or it's we don't have homecoming yet, but we may in the future in Milton with Laurier. Or if it's the Palestinian type of protest, they're happening everywhere at the same time. So the likelihood of Toronto or Peel or Hamilton being available to us, depending on what's happening, is decreased. So we have to look at the possibility of a public safety unit here somewhat proactively, to make sure we have the capacity to deal with a number of different issues here, hopefully more proactively or quickly, or get in front of a situation which could easily have become more out of hand last July 1st in the Bronte area. Deputy Chief Mahar has prepared a lot of information in relation to this. This photo here, I was looking at again yesterday, is around the McDonald's restaurant on Lakeshore Road. There's actually a video that goes with this, which is quite amazing to watch. It's hard to put into this particular presentation, but I'll turn it over to Kevin. I said Kevin is prepared to speak anywhere from 2 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on what the board would like. And, I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. I promise to stay in the 2 minute time. I'll be concise. I think the first starting point for this should be to sort of define what public order is. It's a phrase that is very applicable to policing. It is an official term. It references the management of large gatherings of people with the objective of ensuring public safety and the protection of property. Here in Halton, we have chosen to create the title Public Safety Unit for this new unit that we are proposing, because we think it will better reflect what the objective of this new unit will be. But the term public order is very much appropriate and applicable to this discussion. As the Chief mentioned, I'll try to top off things he hasn't already said. Over the past 5 years, there has been a marked increase in the number of events in Halton region that require a public order perspective applied to them. For example, in the past 5 years, our frontline patrol officers have responded to 129 public protests, 27 labor disputes, 11 large-scale events such as Rip Fest or Sound of Music, and 4 public disorder events. Public disorder events are situations where groups of persons gather in crowds for non-legitimate purposes, and those outcomes can disrupt the community. For clarity of purpose, the photo that the Chief referenced, that is an example for us as a public disorder event. Concurrent with this activity in Bronte, there is a very family-focused event, fireworks event going on in the Bronte area. Those are 2 different events from us from a data perspective. It happens to coincide with it, and interrupt the family-based event, but it is a separate event of some significance. All of these events that I referenced would have benefited from, to some degree, from a level of public order deployment and strategic oversight. We feel quite strongly that the needs of our community and Halton Region have evolved considerably over the last 5 years for a number of the reasons that the Chief has referenced: social unrest, the changing demographics of our community. And the time has come to establish a team of specially trained officers who would form the Public Safety Unit. These officers, just to clarify, would not be full-time officers. They would not be engaged in this activity full-time. They're comparable to our search and rescue team, who are specially trained officers who have a variety of other tasks and roles in the organization. But in the event of a public safety, public order event, they would be deployed. They would be reassigned for that day to this activity. Currently, these events are being staffed by frontline officers. And although they're doing a great job and they're being very professional and they're being very composed, these officers are not trained to deal with these events, particularly the unpredictability of the public disorder events, such as the Bronte fireworks event. As the Chief referenced, the funding required is approximately $600,000. It's a one-time startup capital expenditure, the majority of which would go to training and specialized protective equipment for these officers and clothing to outfit them in line with provincial standards and adequacies. One of the things I do think that's relevant to this conversation this morning is to dispel some of the perhaps public myths around what public order is. Certainly, we see TV coverage of what would be considered the most extreme or violent riotous behavior, and the officers have to wear shields and helmets and protective equipment to protect themselves from projectiles and those sorts of events. And certainly that has happened, and unfortunately there has been some things in our nation's capital a couple of years ago that represents that highest risk, that highest level of public order. But modern day public order is very much a layered approach. It's very proactive versus reactive. It involves utilizing strategies and response plans appropriate to the overall risk assessment of the event. Not all public order events require officers to be equipped to that extent, but the officers that would be on site would be trained in proper techniques. It also focuses on comprehensive pre-planning with all involved stakeholders. In this case in Bronte, it would involve the residents and the commercial members of the community ahead of time to ensure the appropriate planning. We have already started to go down the road of building this capacity. We have trained approximately 6 of our senior officers, our middle managers, so to speak, in the section leads. And essentially what they have done is they've been trained on how to lead a section of 28 officers in a public order deployment. And as part of that training, they have been deployed to Waterloo and Hamilton region during their weekend homecomings this past fall. And they integrated with the Hamilton and Waterloo Police Service. We're grateful to those police services for allowing us to have that job shadow. And what they came back with is already an enhanced understanding of how we deploy officers at all sorts of events, whether they be protests or public disorder events such as this, or even large-scale events like Sound and Music. How we deploy our officers, how we integrate them into the crowds can make a huge difference on how the crowd behaves and how that crowd moves through the event. And we've already started to develop that layering. The next step for us is now to essentially get boots on the ground, is to replace those frontline officers that don't have training and equipment with officers that would have that specialized training and equipment. And when you apply that to the Bronte fireworks in the future forward events, it's probably the most significant local case study that we can reference to explain the enhanced public safety that would come out of this unit. Not all the youth that attend Bronte on that weekend are from Oakville or Bronte area, and not all of them that attend do so with the intent of causing disruptive behavior, lighting off fireworks or becoming involved in fights. But what happens in a public disorder event like this is the crowd mentality creates, and the group of youth gets bigger and bigger, and they lose their in the crowd mentality, they become anonymous. And suddenly crowds behave in a manner that is different. Individually, there's things that a person would not do in their day-to-day life. When they go into a crowd, when they form part of a crowd, they become anonymous. And there's a lot of academic studies that speak to this. It's that mob mentality. You've heard that phrase? That's an academic term based on public disorder. And so we need to be positioned for this events. We can expect them to continue to grow. There's every reason to believe that what has happened in Bronte in the last youth summers will continue in the future, not because it's organized or planned, it has just become a social event of some nature. So when we look at this photo and the video that goes with it, we feel quite strongly that we have outgrown our previous model of using frontline officers and then relying on other services when highest risk is assessed. The chief mentioned when there is large geopolitical events in particular, all public order in the province is stretched to the minimum. There is minimal capacity because every municipality, be it Ottawa, be it Toronto, be it Hamilton, they are dealing with their own public protests, their own events, and we got to the point where we are no longer potentially able to rely on a public order unit from another agency to come here in the event of particularly those large geopolitical events that affect everyone. That was a little bit more than 2 minutes, but I did my best to stay on the shorter.
Oh, it's being cut off.
Jeff has the timer going, but it really is, and the fact that we would be calling it a public safety unit, I think, is very appropriate. It's not a public order unit. It is about public safety, but it's also about officer safety. So, yes, we've been very fortunate, and I've seen the video of a couple of situations. I think one was the Halton Fair, where our frontline officers were able to take control of the situation that was pretty quickly getting more out of hand. And that's good luck, or it's the right officer at the right time, or something is said or done quickly enough, but it's not really the planned and deliberate approach that perhaps we should have. And this unit truly would make the officers who are at some of these situations safer because of the equipment, if they had to use the equipment, but also because of the training. And we would not be able to train all frontline officers to that level, to give them that level of safety. It's similar but different from our tactical team. Our tactical team is so highly trained to deal with so many things. You could not train everyone to do that, to that level, nor equip them that way. Unfortunately, we have to look at this budget item in the way that we are here because the capital budget is so stressed that we did not have room to put this in the capital budget. And Kerry and I were just discussing that quickly, but Kerry could expand on that. It would be nice if we had room in the capital budget for this, and then it would not be another 0.22% increase to the budget this year. So that is we wanted to present the case for or of the public safety unit. The other option that we would ask the board to consider is the overall staffing level. Certainly the 8.22, and it doesn't matter now because the reality is it's being consumed by a variety of different factors, whether that's the job evaluation process largely or otherwise. Would be what would be the impact if we return to the level of staffing of 32 additional officers instead of 20? Obviously the difference is 12, and that is about $1 million, and we could look at the timing of the hiring of those officers, which Kerry and Greg and others have. But for an additional $1 million or 0.47, I think it is percent, we would be able to hire 32 officers as opposed to 20. That would mean one additional officer on each platoon across the 3 districts, because we have 4 platoons in each district, so it would provide that, I want to call it visual for our frontline members who are feeling that they're understaffed and feeling the pressures of staffing, and we hear that from the association quite often. Different examples of when platoons are disproportionately short for a variety of reasons, but every officer here counts because we are at that level where it's very close to the bone, if we put it that way, on what we're able to put out on the streets 24 hours a day. Sometimes there are times during the year when there are more officers here than others. Certainly, there are prime times for vacation and absences in the summer, and there are other planned absences that we cannot control. In today's modern environment, that's parental leave, and a variety of different things that people are certainly, for all the right reasons, have access to. But that option 4 on page 16 is the option of hiring 32 officers as opposed to 20. No additional civilian staff. we would leave that at the number of 4, and those are key prioritized positions. And the 5th option is simply combining those two. If the board chose to approve 32 officers as opposed to 20 and the equipment for the public safety unit, then the cost would be increased to 8.94%, still under 9%, but above the 8.22. We wanted to provide those options to the board. Certainly, when the board considers our budget, and I know you do this very seriously every year, and this board and regional council are so supportive of this police service, we all know that. We would just like to ask that consideration be given to these options as priorities for the service. And then moving forward, it would be a board decision on how that would be presented to council. It's different but similar to last year. And certainly the environment that we're working in when we got to the 8.22 the way that we did is different than last year. But these are priorities for the service, which would be important decisions to benefit the service if we can get to that point. The next page simply summarizes the 5 options so that you have them in one chart, and I think we've done this each year as well. So those are pretty much self-explanatory, and then I would turn it back to Carrie to talk about our capital components and some of the ways that we feel we're going to need to address capital moving forward. Carrie.
Thank you. So this slide outlines the changes we've made to the initial capital submission. So as mentioned earlier in the presentation, we began with a total request of $20.5 million in capital. Through detailed review and prioritization, we've reduced that to a proposed 2026 capital budget of $11.8 million. To achieve this, we've made a number of deferrals and project adjustments to focus on the most critical priorities. In addition, we've identified $1.6 million in reductions in current approved capital projects, reallocating those funds to support higher priority capital needs in 2026 and beyond. Overall, the goal has been to maintain operational readiness while ensuring that the capital plan remains fiscally responsible and sustainable. The next few slides are going to go into the detail of the 2026 proposed capital budget. So our capital program will deliver on key capital investments in information technology, fleet, and facilities. This slide details the capital programs for facilities, fleet, and training. We are proposing ongoing capital investment in our police facilities, including locker room expansion at 30 divisions. As well, there's a $3.5 million budget for our vehicle fleet based on our vehicle replacement cycle and requirements for new vehicles. In addition, capital needs for training are also noted on this slide. We continue to invest in our IT capital program to maintain our current systems and provide for enhancements. The major initiatives include a phased approach to replacement of the portable radios and the CAD replacement project. There is also a capital request noted for in-car camera systems, and overall our total capital program adds up to $11.8 million for 2026. As part of developing the proposed operating and capital budget scenarios, we took into careful consideration a number of budget risks that could impact both this plan and our future forecast. These risks come into play when we look at the forecast assumptions through the next few slides. This slide outlines some of the major assumptions that were taken into consideration as we built our 2027 to 2030 forecasted needs. So as we've already discussed, we cannot continue to fund our capital needs on a year-by-year basis from the operating budget. We need to plan for growth and demand and find a sustainable funding source for our capital program for now and into the future. So you will see in our forecast built into 2027 and 2028 a 1% increase to fund our capital program for needs that have been identified now, but also for projected needs in the future, such as facilities expansion and to respond to growth. In addition, our forecast includes provisions for compensation related to assumed collective bargaining increases and responding to overtime pressures, as the chief had already mentioned. We've included in our forecast what we know today, including increases for IT and fleet and additional costs related to benefits as noted on the slide. This slide outlines our four-year forecast based on the assumptions outlined in the previous slide. It also includes proposed increases for sworn positions, including the catch-up of the 12 sworn positions not included in the 8.22% in 2026, and also responding to growth with additional civilian roles. This forecast reflects the best information that we have today. With that, I'm going to turn it back to the Chief.
Thank you. And I think this is a common slide from our last few budget years, but we certainly want to continue to be the safest large municipality in all of Canada. It's a great honor, I think, for this community, not just the police service, but the regional council and our municipal councillors and our citizens for the way they work with us. And we are blessed here in this region, no doubt, in a lot of different ways, certainly generally from a socioeconomic standpoint, but that also does make us a target of others. We will continue to focus on the strategic plan, key priorities with the board, achieve best ratings and the key measures that we've identified. We have, I know Louise is not here, she's on a senior executive training program this week, but we have again received the honor and recognition of being the employer of choice in the GTA. I don't think we had announced that to the board yet, so don't tell Louise, I'll let her do that in November.
We'll be surprised next month.
Great to have that again. And we want to continue to promote a healthy and respectful workplace. So that's, largely we have great relationships with our police associations, our senior officers association, certainly Kelly as the president of the HRPA, and some of the board members have seen that relationship in different ways during collective bargaining and different events that we are at. That's not the same environment in a lot of different police services, so that's something certainly that is fostered from both sides and from the board working with the associations as well. The association is just in actually a 2-week election mode right now, so we will find out around the middle of November who the next president of the HRPA will be. But those relationships are key to our success here. So I think that concludes the presentation. We've certainly included as draft recommendations or resolutions for the board a variety of different options. Myself and all of the deputies, of course, are here to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you to the team for that presentation. Before we do get into questions, so I'm going to declare a short recess for a bio break. It's 10:44 now. I'd ask everybody to be back in their seats in 10 minutes, please. So let's go. Let's give you a break. Back by 11.
Thank you.
Okay, reconvening this meeting of the board, and our next matter of business is actually going to be item 4.1, which is the 2026 funding request and 10-year capital forecast. So this is our segue into questions on the report. You'll see the various recommendations are contained on that report, including the main recommendation, which is option 2. So with that, I'll call for questions. And instead of just putting your hand up, I'm just going to go board member by board member and ask if you have questions. So I'm going to start at my far left with Lisa. Do you have any questions? Go for it.
I do have a question. I was looking back at the HRPS crime map, which is publicly available, and it is showing almost lit up like a Christmas tree, whether you go back 1 month or even longer. So within 1 month, particularly Burlington, everywhere, south, I'll call the rural areas, a little bit exempted from the frequency of crime identified on the Halton Regional Police Services crime map. And my question has to do with volume of crime. So when we say that we're still the safest municipality of the Big 12, that was one of the slides, the metric, it's like first from first fourth. Does that mean our crime rates are rising as the rest of them are rising? So people are experiencing more crime, but on balance in comparison to the other Big 12, we're still the lowest of the rising crime. I just want to flavor that conversation because, when we're hearing about more experiences in our communities and it's backed up statistically with the crime map of, the various types of challenges, like robberies and violent entries and theft, is that matching up with what we're seeing across the other Big 12, or are we isolated from that, which keeps our numbers low?
Yeah, it's kind of the measurement of the ranking is a relativity thing. So we are relatively low in crime compared to most. And if we're looking at generally municipalities across 100,000 or above 100,000 across Canada is what we could say we were the lowest crime severity index. But, there's a lot of things that come into the crime severity index because it's actually designed by Stats Canada so you can compare relative safety across municipalities. You could have a municipality that had 10 murders and one that only had 1, but this one had 1,000 auto thefts and this one only had 100. Which one's safer? So they try to gauge that on basically what they did was what are the average sentences for all these different crimes across Canada. They aggregate all this. So it's a measure where we can say we're the safest based on the crime severity index.
But are we still experiencing an increase in crime?
Yeah, we could all be experiencing an increase in crime. And if everyone else is still going up, it's like property
taxes.
Like property assessment by impact. If everyone's property values go up and you're still the lowest price, that's a good thing in some ways, unless you're selling. So we do have some crime that's up. We do have some that's down. We do have some crime which has captured the public's attention more than others. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. I think just a couple of weeks ago we were at 25 home invasions in Halton this year. The number is not particularly high, but each one is serious. So if each one of those is a house being broken into, if you have a closer number, if each one of those is a house being broken into at 4:30 in the morning and people, scared to death and dragged out of their beds and things, that's still very serious. But Peel may have had over 100.
Right.
So, and we had a situation come to our attention, I think just last week from Halton Village. People were alarmed at the number of break-ins. There were actually 2 within that week or something. So I'm not looking at the crime map that you're looking at right now, but auto theft is down, but there's still a lot of auto theft.
Right.
Auto theft is down probably across Ontario, so we're probably still way lower in auto theft than Peel in Toronto, but we're still high. So there's reason for public concern for safety. Relatively, we're very.
And I think that's the perfect point. There's still a relative concern for safety that is factually backed up by the incident reports, but we're still the safest in an escalating climate of direct crime, individual property, et cetera. So I just wanted to preface that a little bit because I don't want a conversation to occur that says, we're the safest, why do you need a budget increase? And I think really diving into these details, which are well articulated here, help to shape that picture around what this investment will do in line with the outcomes of the strategic plan that are related to that addressing of crime in general. So I just wanted to preface that. I'll have more detailed questions, Chair, but I'll just begin that with a bit of an overview. I appreciate your answer, Chief.
I guess the other, I mean, if you had 100 deaths due to COVID and every other region has 500, you'd be doing really well, but you still don't want 100 deaths.
Yeah, but if one year you had 100 deaths and the next year you had 200, you still had you had double, but they could have 500 and 1,000, but you're still the lowest deaths, but the impact is spread more widely across the population. So that's the piece I wanted to tease out. Thank you, Chief. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Ingrid, your next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to refer to what the Chief shared with us prior to the budget overview. And that was, Chief, you were saying there's a new senior corporate communications specialist to start next week. And in the 2026 budget, with the 4 civilian positions, one position is another senior corporate communications specialist. So we're adding on. That's not the same one that we're already requesting in the 206.
No, so what's happened is we have the person who we're hiring who will be here next week was added for 2025. So she is already in the 2025 budget, but we weren't able to hire her until now.
Right.
So that's a brand new position. We were also trying in this budget on a prioritized basis to add one senior corporate communications person. But we've had some realignment in corporate communications. We've actually, just as of this week, been able to make the person full-time that we need. She was here today. So we've already looked after that. That one position in 2026 for corporate communications will probably change to the next priority, which I believe is going to be organizational wellness, but we didn't have time to change that. So no, it's a great point that you caught up on that, and pretty amazing that you did, but it's attention to detail, you hit top marks, but no, the one that's coming is 2025, change in 2026 will allow us to realign.
And the other reference that was made is the reference to JEPI and the exorbitant costs that we have incurred. Do we anticipate further JEPI costs in 2026?
We will have some additional JEPI costs, I would think, from a separate process, a separate job review process, which will go on with the Senior Officers Association, with totally separate from the 300 plus members. So of course it's a much smaller group that we'll be dealing with, and there may be some increase in salary as a result of that. There could be some changes otherwise. So that's yet to be determined.
But the cost, as Carrie outlined, was quite significant.
Do you want to talk about that, Carrie?
Yeah, so the cost and through the chair, the cost for the last outcomes that were decided, it was significant, and we have incorporated that into the 2026 budget. For this additional piece, as the Chief mentioned, it is unknown. We've made a small provision within our operating budget for perhaps some sort of an impact to that, but of course that impact is very unknown to us right now.
I'm just going to ask for a quick pause, and I'm going to ask for an acronym break. You've used JEPI several times in the meeting today, being in mind the fact that we are streaming, and I know that there are media watching, for example. Can somebody define JEPI, please, just so that we're not speaking in acronym talk?
Yeah, it's a job evaluation, joint job evaluation review that we have to do. Right. So we define it. Job evaluation and performance. Pay equity. Pay equity? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we've actually changed that acronym, but I still use it. We changed it to something else.
And one more question.
We'll just keep it that way.
We will define it.
Budget process.
We will define it.
Jeffy is
until
more
after
familiar.
the region, then we can do whatever, call it whatever you want.
One other question I have, and thank you, Deputy Mahar, for the overview of the either public safety unit or public order unit. It is in your option 3. So the downside, if that does not get approved, how is the board and the service impacted?
Well, moving forward, if we do not have the funding to purchase the equipment, we would not be able to stand up a public service unit. The CSPA will have very clearly delineated equipment needs that a public order unit would have to have. So, for example, they would have to have the protest types of shields. They would have to have some sort of protective helmets and different levels of equipment, or they would not be able to be a public order unit. Similar to our tactical team, they have to have probably 30 different pieces of equipment, or they could not technically be a tactical unit. So there's requirements in the CSPA for us to have a public order unit. Most of those are around equipment and training.
And you did explain why it's not in capital.
Yes.
You did explain.
Yeah, we had to remove or strip so much out of capital. There's no way we could add something back in.
I'd say it's just top off what she said through the chair is we would continue to answer because we would continue with our current model where we do have an MOU with other police services for those higher risk public order events. The challenge being is, as we identified, we would be vulnerable when there is large geopolitical events. And what we also would be lacking is that ability to have that knowledge and expertise in-house, that layering approach where we could apply it to the lower level events that may not require a public order unit deployed, but there is that enhancement by having that in-house expertise and by being able to deploy officers that have training, specialized training. Right now, we're kind of in the all or nothing scenario where we either rely on a public order unit to come from the service or we rely on our own officers. By having our own public safety unit, and we would call it a public safety unit, it would be responsible for public order maintenance. But by having that in-house, we would enhance our service delivery to a variety of public events. Not all of them being that higher level where there's requirement for a public order unit. It's those lower levels, it's those level 2s and 3s where the knowledge, the expertise, and specially trained officers will enhance all those events. Right now, we would continue with that, but there's some vulnerability to it in the long term. As the chief mentioned, I think he used the word proactive. We are trying to look to the forward, to the future, but the future is here now when you look at the stats in the last 5 years as well. This trend's going to continue. We're going to continue to have events that require strategic management.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to ask my questions at the end as a good chair, but I'm going to defer my position to Nav, who's got his hands up online. So Nav, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just kind of continue on to kind of Ingrid's. So the public order, Halton's growing. There's a lot of, disturbances happening. We might win the World Series, so we might have our own parade in Halton, but
we will.
So my question is, it's 0.25%. So is there a way we can look for efficiencies? I know historically we've used gapping. I'm jumping ahead to a report that you're presenting later, but there's a gapping of 18 constables, and then we're looking for additional constables for next year. Since it's a one-time expense, has consideration been given to using gapping to cover for that? Or like efficiencies?
Yeah, no, I think the problem through the chair on that is we have done so much to reduce our capital everywhere we could going into next year. You saw the 10 million some odd that was removed. And so we don't have the room there, and we don't see at this point a surplus at the end of the year, a significant surplus. And if we do have a surplus, that goes into funding capital, and that moves us forward to that
question the need for a levy moving forward in 27, 28 to deal with capital in a more dependable way. So we're at that point where, and Carrie and I were just discussing that briefly. I mean, if there happened to be $600,000 surplus at the end of the year, and we just make the decision to go ahead and do this, that $600,000 is not going into our reserves to pay for capital, which is already in there. So it's really that tight of a point.
Thank you.
Yeah, you still support.
I'm good. My question was just around that to see if, because it's a small portion, but at the same point, when we want to try to hit the expectations that we put forward last year, see if there's a way we can find within what we have.
Thanks, Nav. Next up is Samira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is pretty typical of what I ask for the first opportunity I get to speak on a budget every year. When we see that there are 20 positions that we are adding, how many of those will come to Milton is a question I will get from my residents right away. Secondly, how will these new positions help lower the home invasion issue that is now, I think, a major issue for Milton? Two questions that I anticipate my residents asking.
Well, if we have 20 officers in the budget right now at 8.22, I think all of our officers that we're hiring, the 20 or the 32, are all frontline positions. One that we're turning into a inspector position in a very high need area. So all of these officers are destined for the front lines. The debate between districts, we have to look at workload, actual workload, we have to look at the growth in Milton is certainly one thing, but there's also the workload in the three districts, and I know Roger manages and analyzes that more than the second time. If you wanted to discuss that, Roger.
Sure, through the chair, thank you for the question. The allocation of those 20 positions we based upon projected growth in those communities. Those are just authorized positions. When we actually hire, we've got bodies, that's where the strategy comes in, because we need to make sure that we are reducing the gap between authorized positions and actuals. And we're trying to keep that fundamentally balanced between policing districts so that we don't have those big gaps. So for example, we are seeing approximately at 25% of our frontline staff are not deployable. And that's because either they're not able to do their job that they were hired for because of an illness or modification or accommodation requirement. There's also exceptions in terms of secondments and things of that nature. So when you're looking at approximately 50 people in each district not showing up to do their position, we need to be very careful on how we assign the real bodies that we get back from the police call. So it'll be a balanced approach in terms of authorized. Each intake every 3 months, we reassess the need and try to balance that across so that every community gets the best value of frontline policing. When it comes to your second question in relation to the responsiveness to violent crime and home invasion and so forth, you have to understand that as much as we have all these specialized units, the first response is by a uniformed member. And so the visibility, the accessibility to frontline is contingent upon our continued growth and ability to manage projections in terms of population increases. So, as Milton increases, we need to make sure that we have more bodies in cars, in their communities, being visible and accessible to our members of our community. And, the increasing even like 1 or 2 bodies per platoon, and there's 16 platoons across the entire region that police 24/7, that gives us the capacity to potentially respond quicker to one of those significant crisis or emergency issues. And so that is why this is such an important job function. If we did one thing only for the Halton Regional Police Service, it would be frontline policing.
Thanks, Sarah. Jane?
Yeah, I just have one question. When I was looking at option 4, I'm just curious, what are we going to get that's tangible to stop crime in the community?
With the 12 additional officers you were speaking to. I mean, tangible in the community is, we
have staff shortages already, without these officers, which Raj was speaking to, some of the absence issues in police, and that's across the board, different services. There's a small service in Ontario that at one point 50% of their frontline officers were not able to come to work or not coming to work. We're certainly not at that level, but that's the level that it is in some places. But when you look at staffing and having to have, for example, some of you are most familiar with the city of Burlington, is 12 officers at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night enough? Sometimes it is, and sometimes 25 wouldn't be enough. So our managers have to struggle with that staffing level of what's actually available, and then balance the need to give people time off. And some of you know people that are in the frontline policing business, and people have to get time off. They have to, whether it's for wellness or family things and otherwise, but it is at that critical point where, to Roger's point, every additional officer per platoon, if I simplify, and it wouldn't be quite that simple, 12 officers, 1 per platoon in each district, means 1 more, in a perfect world, no one's sick, 1 more person is coming to work every Friday and Saturday night without giving just an extra person time off. That's at the level where we are.
If I could top up, so knowing that this question was likely going to come, we leaned into our analytics department. You know, when you break it down, if you think about the fundamental duties of a frontline officer and the most basic of performance, you can expect with an additional 12 officers, an additional 12,800 occurrences responded to, 2,400 traffic stops, 608 offense notices, 576 warrants for, say, driving offenses, over 3,900 reports, 448 arrests, and 256 criminal charges.
I totally appreciate that, because I think people, like, if I'm saying that this is what I want to do, and it's going to cost X amount of more dollars, they're going to ask, well, what are we getting for that, right? So thank you very much for letting us know what we're getting for that.
Would you mind circulating that as a memo, just as a piece of information? Because that was a really interesting piece of data. Sort of like that performance-based objectives thing that we've been looking for. That would be useful.
I would add just one anecdotal thing for you too is, I know years ago on platoons or running a platoon, you'd get to 3 o'clock in the morning and you could send 3 or 4 people home. You didn't have home invasions at 4:30. So a night shift is that much more unknown these days. In the 80s and the 90s and maybe the early 2000s, after 3 o'clock, not that much happened, but that's not the case anymore. People are targeting violent crimes and targeting property crimes at 4 or 5 in the morning. I was just speaking to optometrist in Brodie yesterday who had their smash and grab about a week ago. I didn't even know it had happened. If I had been up, I would have seen it, but yeah, 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, it's definitely different trends.
People try to burn down movie theaters at 5:20 in the morning. Are you done, Jay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Nadine?
Thanks, Chair. My question, actually, before I ask a question, just a simple question about, you mentioned earlier that we need additional resources, especially for the events like protest, talking about Palestine protest and stuff. Do we have like any average cost, any average number, like how much it cost us for each event? Or it depends on, different area, different...
We don't normally. We can break that down in different ways. We can, I think it'd be about $100,000 if we called in a full public order unit, or is it 50, Kevin?
The estimate is for a small section, which would be approximately 28. It would be $50,000 for a day for them to come to Halton. But in all likelihood, that would probably be stretched out longer because they need to come. Travel time, prepare time, staging time, cleanup time. So 50,000 would be the minimum probably if we ever had to request a public order unit to come in for the day.
For each event.
For each event. And what happens now, if we know of a planned event, and we had some in all of our municipalities, I think over the last year, if we think about some of the pro-Palestinian types of protests, we can plan for some of them to some degree. The shifts can plan for how many officers they have that might have to be downtown Oakville or Milton or wherever the situation is going to be. And then we can call some people in on overtime. The overtime is sometimes easier to track. How much does that cost on Saturday morning because we had 4 officers on overtime for 6 hours? But there's the additional cost of all those on-duty resources, which we're already paying for, but it's taking all of them away from doing anything else that they would be doing. And that's when I mentioned we talked with the provincial government about that surge funding type of grant, and they're $150 million they're thinking of having available for whatever that might become. The position put forward by some of us as chiefs is it shouldn't just be the overtime, because we also Toronto may have 50 public order people already going to look after that incident, and why should the City of Toronto and the basic Toronto police budget have to fund all of that as well? Because there are some extraordinary costs to some of these things. Proportionately different, relatively, again, here. We don't have the Toronto numbers in protests, but relatively, they are considerable.
So to, second question regarding the public order safety unit and equipment. Probably you mentioned that there's already other service, they have already units like those. And I think it's one of the option 3 where you ask for $600,000 extra for that. Do we have any kind of conversation with any other police service that if there is something province-wise or region-wise, we can have a separate trained unit, as Deputy Mahar mentioned, that there are specific trained people. And again, most of these events are like planned kind of events, like where we know that there will be a protest happening and such. So if we can talk to other services and put something together, like like instead of us spending that amount, we can team up with others?
We certainly do that to a large degree, because when it comes to public order units in Ontario, and the Inspector General reported on this not too long ago in a separate report on public order units, that we do fairly well with what we call the hub model. So some services have them and some don't, and which is good. And we have not had to come to the board for this funding previously, because we've got to the point where we think we need it now and moving forward. Other services already have them, and they've invested significantly in them. And they will make those resources available to us if we ask for assistance. That's the whole, we could have an MOU for it, we could do it on a one-off assistance sort of basis. But it's apt to be, that is one of the situations, which is apt to be at a chargeback situation. So if we have a protest in Oakville and we think we need a public order unit, and contact Chief Bergen, and we do the paperwork and the board's aware, and they send over 28 people for a number of hours, that's probably going to cost us $50,000. But the problem with that is if they're available. And the if they're available is just one other consideration. Will you have a Palestinian protest in every other region at the same day and time? Maybe not. But who knows what's going to be happening in the years ahead. We didn't actually, I don't think we ever anticipated the number of, I'm only using pro-Palestinian protests as an example, but we certainly I never expected to see that many in Ontario as we have seen. So it becomes a question of two things. One, if we don't do it, we may end up paying for it in a different way. It may be less, depending how much we need it. It could be more. But they also might not be available. And then we would get back to the situation where our frontline officers would have to deal with the situation
and not have the benefit of the enhanced training and the equipment if it was needed, which becomes a slightly different, officer safety, citizen safety type of issue.
And you did mention about the provinces putting some money on the side and putting something like that. What was that?
Well, the province, one of the things they haven't finalized, but we understand is coming, is a grant, which I think may be $150 million in total, to deal with something that they're going to call surge funding. And we don't have it clearly defined yet. That could include some funding for overtime on different things in relation to protests or particularly terrible trend in carjacking or whatever it may be. They initially thought that would just be overtime. We've encouraged them to think of different things that might not be overtime. So down the road, if we ended up with the equipment for a public safety unit and then we end up with protests and the public safety unit is being used more often, some of that money might be available for salary-related dollars at that point, but that's way down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple questions, and I'll go back for second-timers if anybody's interested. So first of all, the vehicle capital allocation of 3.5, I think it's 3.5 million. Is that based on, which number is that based on in terms of the number of new officers? Is that based on the 8.22?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So if there was to be an increase, there would have to be an increase in that as well, obviously.
We would go back and take a second look at our capital program and see if we could stretch it a bit to accommodate for that.
Okay, so all those capital requirements that pertain to individual officers are based on the number in the scenario 2?
Correct.
Okay. What do we need to do to move forward with the capital levy program? I know you've got that earmarked for 2027. Do we have to formalize anything at any point to start socializing this with the region, et cetera? So what are the steps to get that in place? Because in my mind, that's critical.
I think there's a couple of things that would benefit the board in working with the region and socializing it. So one of them would be, I think, our story through our forecast and articulating that we see the need for that now and into the future. One of the other pieces of work that we will be undertaking next year is a 10-year facilities and asset management plan, and that would go hand in hand with the needs to have a capital levy, and that's something that we will be bringing to the board, and then I think it would be a good idea to discuss the opportunity to take that to the region as well. So I think there's a couple of things that we can do to start to socialize that, but one of those things as well would be the board's support of seeing that there is a fairly significant increase sitting out in our 4-year operating forecast.
We should probably make sure that the final presentation that goes to the region next month clearly highlights, underlines, underscores, whatever that process is coming up, so we can start that socialization process at that point. Because I know we use capital levies at the municipalities level. I think it's essential that we, personally, I think it's essential that we move in that direction so that we have more predictability in that area. The CA training program. So I know there's been some delays in delivery of equipment and deployment of training. Are we anticipating being compliant in 2026 on that program? And if so, is all that money built into this budget? Because I know it's just for the ammunition for the training is pretty dear.
Short answer is yes and yes.
Okay. Will we be in compliance by the end of 2026?
It's referenced in another board report on the CSPA implementation. The answer is yes.
I'm going to apologize in advance. Okay. I didn't get a chance to fully digest that report due to the timing of the delivery. So if I ask a question, I apologize. Not that I don't read your reports, but I missed that, having the time to really dive into that. I was so focused on the budget. Mental health training, you talked about that's an additional cost. I know that there's been some changes made at OPC with respect to this. What sort of costs are involved in that? Like, is this I don't know what that number actually looks like, or is that in the report as well?
But that's a different report. There's a capital funding request on the agenda for today that relates directly to that.
Yeah.
So essentially, we are now in a position where we are going to have to purchase specialized equipment to facilitate
the 3D goggles and that sort of thing.
So that our training bureau can facilitate the mandated training within the CSPA. There's some baseline training done at OPC, but the bulk of that specialized crisis intervention training is going to be done here in-house. We will be looking probably, like a lot of police services, for an extension on the deadline. Quite frankly, the deadline in the Act did not allow for the procurement to happen synchronized. So it's the only area of the CSPA where we're vulnerable not to reach the compliance and training, is purely because of the time it took for some of these provisions to become clear in terms of what the expectations were, particularly in terms of which vendor we can purchase this equipment from and then to get the equipment in hand. We will be starting the process early in the new year, but there is going to be across probably in a number of services, possibly through the OACP, to ask for an extension on that training towards later in the year of 26.
I mean, to me, this sounds like a DEFCON 1 kind of emergency, because we heard earlier that 25% of our call-outs are, in fact, criminal. The rest of 75% are social issues, including mostly mental health, I imagine. That just re-accentuates the need to get our heads around this very quickly. So that was actually a question that was to lead to my next question, that is, because this is mandated by the province, I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Don't shake your head at me. Is there any potential funding opportunities to cover some of these costs?
Not today.
Okay. Did you discuss this with the Premier and his?
No, not
because, I mean, when they add all these programs, which are great programs, I mean, mental health training, the C8 program, they're all great initiatives, but they come at a huge cost to municipal policing, and they really should come with a check. I think the past president of the OACP wants to jump in on this.
We've asked that question directly, and the answer is that there is no funding envelope for the mental health crisis training piece of it.
Yeah, this is, the CGO just mentioned that now you know what we in the municipal sector feel like. They keep dropping these initiatives on us and say, good luck, and we hope you pay for it. By the way, we won't let you charge development charges for this anymore. Anyway, that's another tirade.
Downloading.
Yeah, downloading. So that this is a form of downloading on us. And while these are great programs and they should happen, there should be an understanding that this is a huge shock to the municipal tax system when they drop this on us, which is the most inefficient form of taxation there is. So that's another tirade. That's my TED Talk for tomorrow. What other, you mentioned it, and I've heard this statistic before, and I know we're nowhere near this. You mentioned that one service in Ontario, that shall remain nameless, has 50%, or had at one point 50% of their officers off duty. I know our number had been in the past about 10%. Where are we right now?
I think we're closer to, in total, officers that are unavailable or unable to work. And that encapsulates a whole bunch of different things, like maternity leaves and all sorts of different things.
I'm not applying fault to it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what the number is, because it's a factor in budgeting and finance.
Can you give me a few minutes?
Sure.
To look that up. It's a varying number, but I can give you what current minutes and reference.
Okay. I have to ask this. I know the answer, I think, but I have to ask it because this is public discussion. But in terms of the PSU, I got the acronym right this time, Public Safety Unit. I'm assuming there is no funding available for this, external funding available for this.
No.
Okay.
You did know the answer.
I did know the answer, but I think it's one of those questions that we need to make sure that we are verifying for the public's perspective, because there are those who are watching this, and somebody might be writing about this. I want to be clear, just to make sure that everybody understands the challenges that we're facing dealing with these. This is an adequacy issue, and it's an appropriateness issue. So I just want to ask that question.
I think just on that, if I may. The one area of difficulty the province would have to ever do that now for setting up a public safety unit would be all the services that already have one. And they would say, well, let's go back and here's what we spent. And so it wouldn't just be, it couldn't just be additional ones now.
Good point. The fairness doctrine. Staying on the public safety unit, if the board were not prepared to move forward with that option today, but we wanted you to continue to move forward with a public safety unit, are there other options? are there any capital projects that could be deferred? Is there any scenario that you could see moving forward without us going that extra 0.26%, I think it is, on the budget ask?
Well, I don't think there is a way for us to do it from a financial perspective without it being approved. The only thing that we could look at potentially would be, if this was not passed by the board or by regional council, to look at any amount of surplus that we might have at the end of this year. But again, I'm not suggesting that the board would say, well, use up any surplus you have at the end of this year, because that would hurt our capital moving forward.
Yeah.
So the board could ask for that to be prioritized or to be a consideration, but it's kind of if we take the 600,000 out of, if we do have that much of a surplus at the end of this year and we use it, that might be okay for the public safety unit equipment, but it would hurt us moving forward.
One of the other options to consider, not that I'm suggesting you would do this, is not just looking at the capital budget. You'd have to look at the operating side as well, and you'd have to look at the expand positions that we're putting forward and decide if what the priority is.
The CGO just gave me that same note before you said. I think you two are like having a mind melt here. Okay. What about the question? And I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it. There's nothing in capital that can be further deferred to cover this cost.
We've done a lot of that work in bringing the capital budget to you today, and we have already deferred almost $10 million worth of programs and projects. If you referred back to slides 21 and 22, that's where you do see the details of the capital program. If there's something that the board specifically would like to take us back and reconsider, but we've already done a lot of that work in bringing this to you today.
There was one thing in that area that I was going to actually ask you about, and I've now forgotten what it was. Give me 1 second here. I'll ask the next question while I'm doing that.
Which pages again, Kerry?
The other option that we have looked at and discussed, and it doesn't really work, is if you spread the 600,000 over 2 years, 300,000 per year, but until you spend the 600, we would not have the equipment that we need to have the unit. So you'd sort of be buying half the stuff and not be able to use it until you had all of it because of the CSPA.
That sounds like the glass half full and not going to work, being half pregnant. So the one I was going to ask you about, thank you for raising that, was the replacements and approved expansion of vehicles, which is $3.5 million or $3.6 million roughly. Is there any capacity in there? Jeff just took his glasses off like he's going to yell at me. Is there any capacity in there to defer any of that? Or maybe not pay the bill until, I'm just kidding. Is there any capacity to defer any of that?
Off the top of my head, the answer to that would be no, because we are already taking a look at it, but we can go back and take another look. I can't say with certainty that there would be 600,000 available. We have already also made some provisions in terms of not buying brand new vehicles, in some cases reassigning vehicles to units to try and save some costs, as well as looking at how many years we're holding on to some of our vehicles and stretching it as best we can. So on the surface, the quick answer to that would probably be no, but happy to take that back.
Were you signaling you wanted to get a piece of that?
Full confidence in all of Kerry's answers.
Okay, thank you. I just got that look, so I just wanted to...
I always have an answer for that. Just don't say it.
Okay. So this one seems almost counterintuitive to ask you this question, because this is wanting to spend more money. The board manager, our operations manager for the board, has raised the point that we have some potential capital needs at the board, and I don't know if they've been addressed in this report. I know that we sent to our operating budget, and that's incorporated in this. Have we addressed those capital needs, because they will come up next year?
I know for certain the 80,000 potentially for renovation is not included in this. I had sent some correspondence about that, I think, a while back.
Yes, you did, but I wasn't sure if we...
And we had to, I think, phase in some of the on the technology side, or try to reduce the technology costs for the board. Otherwise, we would have to go back again to the operating budget and reduce somewhere, and I don't think we can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's those conflicting demands that we have, right? I mean, if we insist on $80,000 to put walls up, that's potentially more money out of the public safety unit, and I don't want to be the one responsible for that, so I get the point. But I do think the IT security stuff we do have to address.
And which we have been able to address that.
Adam just breathe a fresh, or Bill just breathe a breath of relief from that one, I'm sure. Okay, I think those are all the questions that I have right now. Let me just double check here. I'm going to go back to see if anybody, I know Lisa indicated she may have more questions later. Do you have more questions?
Sure, I'll just ask two really broad ones, and they'll just be like, do you have absolute confidence that you've instilled and created a culture of savings and efficiencies across the entire service, which is presented through this budget?
Absolutely.
And do you feel that you have absolute confidence that there's enough funding appropriated to ensure the mental well-being of all of our service members through programs, et cetera?
There's probably two parts to that. So
I know there's
the mental
never have
wellness.
enough, yes, but are we appropriately funding the mental wellness for our service members?
So our organizational wellness unit and that sort of area in particular.
Return to work.
I believe so, and I think we're fortunate because of some other alignment that I alluded to in the corporate communications area that we're able to add one prioritized position to organizational wellness unit. So I can say yes much more now than I could have last week.
Okay, thank you, I feel comfortable with that. Mr. Chair.
Any other second-time questions? Not seeing any. I just have one very quick one. The projections, and I apologize, it's probably on the slide, but I might have missed it. I just tweaked my thoughts. The projections for next year, are you including the 1% capital levy in that? Okay, thank you.
Correct, in 2027 and 2028.
Perfect, thank you. I assumed it was on the slide. I just wanted to ask, just to clarify. Okay, members of the board, that concludes, I guess, our conversation on this. So we need to now actually take some action. We have to make a choice. So your choices before you, I mean, the main motion is probably pretty simple, which is the approval of the budget, option number 2, which is the budget based on the agreed upon regional budget guideline. But the service have also delivered these additional options. So you got two additional, I mean, the first option is obviously a non-starter. That's just there for information, just to demonstrate this utility of trying to approve a budget at 4.2%. It makes no sense at all. The option 2 is the 8.22%. Option 3 being the budget, the 8.22 including the public safety unit, and then the other options relate to additional HR resources and sworn officers. So looking to somebody to kick the ball off here or get us moving in the right direction. Samira.
Mr. Chair, I choose the recommendation number option 2, which is 8.22, and I would like to put forward that motion.
Okay. Is there a seconder to that motion? This is seconded by Ingrid. Thank you. Okay, discussion. Do you want to speak to your motion? Okay. Ingrid, do you have any comments on that?
No. Well, Chair, I believe, if you don't mind, point of order, if you could please either bring it up on the screen or read it into the record so that the community who is watching knows what option 2 includes.
Well, let's do both. Let's put it up on the screen, and Samira, if you want to read that option, that'd be great. Thank you for that's a good suggestion.
As my comment, I will read it. So my motion is that the Halton Police Board approves the 2026 funding request of $252,152,191 and forwards the request to Halton Region. And further, that the Halton Police Board approves an increase in the authorized sworn strength of 20 positions. And further, that the Halton Police Board approves an increase in the authorized civilian strength of 4 positions. And further, that the Halton Regional Police Services Board approves the 10-year capital budget and forecast as presented.
Thank you, Samira. So that was moved by Samira and seconded by Ingrid. And to be clear, for those maybe watching, this option 2 reflects the 8.22% increase that we've been referring to based on the regional guideline. Discussion. Okay, are there any thoughts of how you want to deal with the advice on the public safety unit?
At this point, I would like to present the motion as is, but if any of my colleagues here on the board want to add any amendments or additions to it, I'm open to that as a friendly amendment.
Well, we can do it as an amendment, or we can, if you want to amend the budget motion, or we can do a subsequent motion. I'm at your discretion at this point. That's why I'm throwing it to you guys to tell me what you want to do. Do you have a comment on that?
I would be interested in seeing what it looks like procedurally to keep them separate. So the budget recommendation of the 8.22, I heartily endorse and support. I think it would be very difficult to deliver a rationale or a confidence in another number besides either of those.
Okay.
The number 2, 8.22. I also think it speaks to accountability and trust with our community, which we've derived from our community responses. That's really important to our community as identified in our strategic plan. So doing what we said we would do is a key way to build that confidence with the community. So I'd like to leave this like this. I don't want to make an amendment to it, but perhaps we could take the vote and close the item and then close this recommendation and do a separate one that could maybe address options for funding the public order unit.
Yeah, I accept that as a reasonable approach to address the matter.
Okay.
Okay, so let's, I'm going to call one more time for questions or comments. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion on the floor? I don't see Nav on screen. Or is he still with us?
Yeah, he's there.
Okay. Carrie, no, we don't do recorded votes.
I voted in favor.
You want a recorded vote?
We should.
So Lisa's called for a recorded vote. That's always in order. So all in favor, I will call the roll. Lisa?
Support.
Ingrid?
Support.
Samara?
Support.
Jane?
Support.
Nadeem? Support. Nav?
Support.
Thank you, and I will support that as well. So that has been addressed. Okay, second piece. At the suggestion of Lisa, we deal with the public safety unit separately. Do you have a proposal?
I will ask for some guidance, possibly from our DGO or the chair, but the sentiment that we would want to table is, identify funding sources, whether in capacity or outside or external funding sources, to identify a way in which to support the public order unit outside of the budget approval.
Okay. Do we want to take a minute maybe and maybe just let's recess for 5 minutes. Let's try to craft a motion.
Sure.
We could include the command team if they want to give their input as well, and then we'll reconvene once we've got that motion so we can be very clear with the public what it exactly is we want to achieve.
Yeah, and I'll just temper this for the public. So in no way does this indicate any loss of confidence in adequate and effective policing, but it is something that is a growing concern that we can address incrementally as these types of things become more prominent in our communities. So I'm confident in the budget as tabled. This would be, if possible, element that we can address, but I don't feel that it is to take away from any of the work that's already been tabled today.
Yeah, and I would echo that sentiment myself. I think the public safety unit is a project whose time has come. We just need to find a way to pay for it. So with that, I'm going to recess the meeting until we draft a motion. If you're watching on YouTube, this is not the end of the public session, so stay tuned. We'll be back as soon as we've got a motion to present. Meeting in recess.
Can someone
I was moving in that direction. That's what I wanted to end up doing anyway. I talked about the clean CR this morning.
Sure. I know, I got you.
Sure.
We're good to go. We're good to go? Okay. Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order at 12:14. To anybody watching, I just want to let you know that we took a brief recess to draft a motion so that we could affect our position on the public safety unit. And I'm going to go back to Lisa Kearns, who is the mover of the motion, to read the motion into the record.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you everyone for your patience and collaboration during that brief recess. The motion reads as follows, that the Halton Police Board accepts and supports the recommendation that a public safety unit is essential to public safety in Halton Region, and that staff be directed to explore funding options for a public safety unit cost at $600,000, including operational surplus, capital reserves, or prioritized external funding, and that staff provide an update by the end of Q1 2026. Chair, I'll leave it to you if you feel it needs additional comments or if you feel it's self-explanatory.
Well, I'm going to first get a seconder, see if we have a seconder in the room. Thank you, Nadeem, in seconding that. Do you wish to make any comment on it?
Sure. I think it's important to note that we have done the policy work for the public safety unit as part of our commitment to adequate and effective policing. So that work is done. The piece is that policy doesn't always parallel in with funding at the exact same time. So this is a strong signal to say this is our next big priority from a funding perspective after we've already met and made our commitment at 8.22% as a option number 2 to be tabled up to the region. So this is adjacent to but in parallel with the work that we're already doing, and it aligns with our regional ask and with our policy work that's been completed earlier in the year.
I have one friendly amendment request, even though I helped draft this, I missed it in the first place. We shouldn't be directing staff, we have to direct the chief. That's just the way the CSPA works. So staff should be replaced by chief. That means the chief does all the work and everybody else can go on vacation.
I'm very happy to make that friendly amendment, Chair.
I'd like to make an amendment to that amendment.
Don't worry. This is just for practical purposes. Our job is to direct the chief. It's the chief's job then to direct the staff.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I just gave him a big stick, didn't I?
Sorry, may I make one more amendment?
Sure.
In light of that procedurally, may we also add a line that says, and that be reported onto the action registry?
Sure, they are automatically.
Okay.
Every thing that's requesting a report back goes on the action registry.
Perfect.
Okay.
Those staff just be changed to the chief.
Yeah.
I did it, thank you.
In both places, I think it's 2 places. Yeah. Okay, so with that friendly amendment, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any further questions on this? I can't see if Nav's hand's up by any chance.
No, he's gone.
No, he's gone, okay. All in favor of the motion as presented? And that's carried, thank you. It didn't take long. Sorry I blew that estimate for you, Kevin. Okay. I predicted that we would have the budget done by noon. Or did I say the meeting over by noon? Technically. That's okay. But I really blew it. Okay, we're moving on to 4.2, electronic storage detection.
Sorry, you need to do the information items.
Oh, I'm sorry, the information reports. I apologize. So we did skip by the information reports, 3.1 through 3.5. Are there any separations on those reports? Oh, yes. Yeah. So the CGO has asked for separation of the 3.4, which is the CSPA alignment update. That's the report from Chief Tanner. Are there further further separations? Okay, I look for motion to receive 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.5. I'll read the titles for the public's purposes. 3.1 is the quarterly human resources summary. 3.2 is the use of force report. 3.3 is C's fund statement. 3.4, which we separated, is the CSPA alignment update. And 3.5 is the Crime Stoppers quarterly update. And just for the members of the public, these are information items. They don't actually have specific action attached to them. So the board members have read them, understood them, asked their questions where necessary. And so we're just at a position where we can either ask additional questions or simply accept them as information. So I'll look for motion to accept or to approve the receipt of these items. Samira? Seconded. Ingrid, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, we're going to separate 3.4. Did you want to
Just if there's any questions from the board.
Okay, so 3.4 is the CSPA alignment update, and that is been presented by the chief, and this is with respect to the amendment, sorry, not the amendments, but the new Community Safety and Policing Act, which came into force in effect on April 1st of 2024. So we've had a little over a year and a bit to live with this. I know we're working hard to comply with it at the board level, and this is a report from the services perspective in terms of compliance with the legislation. Members of the board, do you have any questions about this at all? All right, first of all, let's start with the chief. Did you have any comments on this?
No, I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the level of compliance we have already. There was one item that we looked at, I think it was provincial approaches to things, and we've since addressed that one as well. So I'm very pleased with the level of compliance. And so it came back from Inspector Paul Foley's work in this area with our people that work in the area specifically to do with our chief's directives and policy-related matters.
Members of the board, comments or questions on this? Lisa?
Sure, I have one question. It's actually quite perfect from what we just spoke about, and I've often referred to my background in procurement. And so I just wanted to bring your attention to the bottom of page 3, ORIG 392-23, and it could be an apology of my memory, please, if you don't mind. Just can you remind us the agreements that we have with these counterparts to deliver on this maintaining the public safety and peace side of things? So I know we're still working on it. Do we have everything aligned in terms of those agreements and the signatories and things like that? And I could be wrong. I thought there was something that we were maybe waiting for that was part of a bigger agreement. So if you could just share any additional thoughts on that?
I'm just trying to see exactly where we're at.
The assistance agreement.
Deputy Maher?
No, we have current existing MOUs in place to address you're specifically referring to maintaining public peace?
Yes.
Public order, we have those covered off. We have those agreements covered off as MOUs as part of the central office.
Okay. Do we know when, so they're active, signed, executed, and then we have a concept of when they come due so that we're getting ourselves up to speed before those come due?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's my question there, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Okay, I have a couple quick ones. So what about the, on the report, you said that you're compliant with governance review. I'm curious what governance you're referring to, because governance is kind of our jurisdiction. So how did that, where did that come from?
Sorry, Chair, what page are you referring to?
Page 2. It's in the middle. My glasses, I have a glasses here. Help me find this.
Referring to the paragraph. Through the chair, you're referring to the pie chart? Is that what you're referring to? Or the pie chart?
The pie chart.
Probably would be better titled procedure review program. Probably a better title for that.
Okay. Yeah, because governance is,
yes,
you're treading in our territory.
Understood.
Okay, and specifically with respect to the service level agreements, is the underwater search and recovery program compliant with the CSPA? It was adopted a long time ago. I remember that conversation. We had a whole conversation about liability and such with it. Is that older agreement compliant with the CSPA?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
It's been specifically looked at?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not too old. It's like 2.5 years old or
Well, I
something.
thought it was older than that.
It's the public safety one that Lisa was talking about. It's 20 years old.
Yeah.
We have to file them, so we will file that now with the IG. Now that you've clarified that it is still in place. Yeah. So basically to get public order from Hamilton or Waterloo. And the underwater search and recovery from Peel. And both of them include the,
I think Peel,
the fee schedule.
the OPP, and then Niagara is the only other service I think that has maintained undercover because of the Niagara Gorge and things, so they have significant number of recoveries.
Yeah, I know it's a very specialized and seldom used piece of gear.
So the health and safety and the risks around, well, as you would know. And from a situation in Waterloo where a member of their dive team was killed a number of years ago trying to rescue a young boy from a dam situation. Training is rightfully very high level.
Which is what I think preceded that long discussion when a former board member who's no longer with us under another chair, we discussed that in great lengths about the liability and the risks involved in that. That's why I was asking that question. I didn't realize we redid it 2 years ago. I guess I must have missed that.
Yeah, that one is very, there's a third one on the Boundary Road with Peel, but it's not really an adequacy thing. It's more of a, I don't know if that agreement's still in place, but it's like who does, Winston and Churchill? It's not in place, you're saying, Ken?
No, it's not that's section 14.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an adequacy.
Okay, terrific. Members of the board, I'll come back to you for further questions. If not, I'll look for motion to receive the report with thanks. If nobody wants to move it. Okay, it fails. I'll move it. Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Nadine, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. 4.1 we've dealt with. 4.2, electronic storage detection K9. This one is really interesting.
It's Astro, the robot dog.
So this is an excellent opportunity for us. So it's a group called the Operation Underground Railroad is willing to pay for effectively all of the training and the purchase of a dog. That the dog would be housed by one of our members in our Internet Child Exploitation Unit. Any other funds would be covered by the provincial strategy, but the dog is trained to smell a specific compound that is in USB sticks. And if you won't have been, but when you go to some of these houses, sometimes, if you're looking for a USB stick or a very small one that may have exploitation material on it, it could be a needle in a haystack. Or so much more where they're intentionally hiding it in different places not meant because they're waiting for the day that they're going to get raided. So the dog would be used for doing that, going on us with warrants to sniff out things that maybe we wouldn't find specifically. And the side benefit of it would be having the dog will be inside of, it would come to work, it would be in our computer crime unit. People find dogs quite soothing. And it would have that benefit as well. So it's kind of it is very much a win-win for us that we would get this free and get a lot of use out of it.
Does Bill get to keep the dog?
He'll get nothing.
Okay. Questions on this? I mean, I have 1,000 questions that are technical, like how does the dog do that? But I won't get into that question. Yeah. But my practical question is, you said it's for ICE, but I guess we can't use that acronym anymore, can we?
I didn't use the acronym.
I know, and I just realized I used the acronym. We need to change that one. The Internet Child Exploitation Unit. But can the dog be deployed to other areas? Because I mean, this kind of detection would be useful in many other areas, I would imagine.
It becomes our dog. If there's an opportunity to use it, we will deploy it.
I wasn't sure whether there's a condition on the funding that somehow it only be used in that particular.
That's obviously what the intent is for, but it makes no sense that we wouldn't use it for other things.
I don't remember who said it this morning, but one of you, wonderful people, was talking about the fact that almost every crime involves some degree of technology. So obviously this would be across the board. Okay, members of the board, there's a recommendation here that we approve the acquisition by the Halton Regional Police Service Computer Crime Unit of an electronic storage detection, K9, I'm not going to read the acronyms, for the Internet Child Exploitation, with an acronym I will not say, unit to enhance the service's ability to locate digital storage devices during search warrants. Can I get that motion, please? Thank you, Nadine. Seconded by? Jane. All in favor? That's carried. That's the 2021 or the 21st century. And I'd like to learn more about, at some point, it'd be interesting to have a presentation, like how this works.
Yeah, for sure we will. Yeah, it's a great idea.
Because that's stunning and a real sea change in terms of investigation across the board to be able to do that. Interesting. Okay, 4.3, mental health crisis response training, and we alluded to this earlier. Is there any comment from the team on this?
Nothing further through the chair that I haven't already mentioned earlier around why this is essential, why we're making this recommendation.
CGO?
I just think it'd be great if the board could get a demo of that, virtual reality mental health training in the future. Because de-escalation has been so topical over the last decade or so. Yeah.
And so much of our resources are being devoted to this, it behooves us to really better understand it. So good call. Members of the board, any questions on this report?
Yes, I do. Just a question. Do we have any kind of collaboration, or I mean, obviously you have done a lot of training and conversation with the medical side. Do we have any kind of report or anything, like any recommendation from different like medical experts in terms of putting a unit like this?
Specifically the training regarding the mental health crisis training. We have an existing unit. We have 2 existing units that address mental health crisis. Our COAST unit and our MERT unit. And we can bring a presentation forward at a future time to explain what those 2 units do. Those are specially trained officers working with specially trained civilian members to deal with this. However, this training is meant to ensure that any frontline officer, no matter who it is, that finds themselves in a situation where they are de-escalating a crisis situation has that training. So we already have a number of strategies in place to deal with that very significant call volume. This training is mandated by the province in the Act to ensure that there's a level playing field, that every frontline officer, every officer in general can go out, no matter what happens today, if they find themselves in a situation with someone in crisis, they have the skill set. So we already have some of that. We're trying to level that off and ensure that it's across the board. That's what this training will do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would think further to that, between our mobile crisis rapid response teams, which have now been around for quite a while, and the training that we have done with our officers, this is sort of a symptom of a provincial approach to an issue where everyone gets treated the same so that they can say everyone at least has the bare minimum. We have probably done a lot of this training already, but we're still going to be mandated to do what we're required to do now. And there may be a service somewhere that has done significantly less, and it's good that they're mandating this sort of thing. But it's sort of like, no matter what resources you have, you're going to be caught up in, here's what you need to do. So it is an expense for the service. It's good to ensure that all of our frontline members have that base level. I'm very confident, and with just some of our discussions on the break, the way that our members continually and very professionally deal with mental health situations, whether it's a normal frontline officer or an officer assigned with a crisis psychologically trained nurse type of practitioner in the car with them. We have very few issues that come to light as we see sometimes in other jurisdictions. So this will sort of be the tip up here. We'll do one more thing, but I think our officers are doing a great job day to day with thousands of mental health situations.
Thank you. Further questions? Nadine, would you give me a motion to approve the recommendation, please? Thank you. Seconded by? Anybody? Lisa, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Just another thought for this dog. Could they find my remote control that I've lost somewhere in there? I'm just kidding. Okay, 4.4, Administration of Human Resources Policy Amendments. So this is a report from the CGO. Fred, do you want to just give us a bit of an update on this?
It's the changes, the proposed changes are shown in track changes. Up until new paragraph 4 and 5, it's basically just some wordsmithing updates because of the new legislation. Primarily, paragraph 4 talks about appointments. So I worked extensively with Kevin, and we've been talking about this for over a year, I think, altogether. to update this, and essentially the board is responsible to appoint 3 types of employees: new constables, experienced constables, and special constables. This is a responsibility that under the new legislation the board cannot delegate. So this spells out and those appointments have got to be made obviously before they are actively working in public or in the cells, as the case may be. And so this proposal spells out the requirements in paragraphs 4 and 5.
And just to highlight the fact that there was broad consultation on this, including, I believe you consulted with David Tilley as well.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the compliance with the CSPA.
Yeah.
And the IG's expectations.
The one thing I haven't specified in this proposed amendments is whether these will be made in public or in camera. To date, it's been the practice in Halton that they're in camera. There are other boards that do this in public. Maybe Dave, do you want to weigh in on that? In terms of whether the appointments should be public or in camera?
I think you'd have to make a determination based on section 44 and whether it meets the criteria to go in closed. I mean, it's personal information, right?
To say, because it's identifiable individuals, the justification to go in camera is there.
Okay. My instinct is to leave it in camera because, I mean, if we're appointing, then theoretically, although I don't know that that would happen, we could say no to appointing somebody if we have to approve an appointment, and you don't want to do that in a public setting. So I would say that, you leave this in, like all HR matters, you leave it in confidential session.
Okay. Wasn't clear on that, and it just came to my mind yesterday. And I didn't propose that change anyway, so just wanted to that question mark off.
Great. I mean, there's probably some security reasons for that as well, not having that publicly searchable document as well, in case those individual officers are in a capacity that could compromise their personal safety, I would think. Okay, that's the proposal. Any comments from command team?
No, I know that work's been going on for quite some time. I think it looks good from my perspective, so thank you.
Make a motion to approve the recommendation, please. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Nadine. All in favor? That's carried. 4.5, the contract for employee engagement survey. I will point out that this is really a confirmation recommendation because we did a straw poll on this because of the timeliness of wanting to achieve this. We did a straw poll amongst the board members. It was unanimous. So we're basically just presenting the motion for formal approval today. So unless there's any questions on this, I'll look for a motion to formally approve this proposal. Is there a motion? Thank you, Samira. Thank you, Jane. Comments, questions? Everybody happy over there? Always. Good. All in favor? That's carried. And just for the public's perspective, we've approved the awarding of a contract to Forum Research for an employee engagement survey, and this is to basically get a pulse on what our employees, both sworn and civilian, are feeling about their jobs, and to also comply with our own strategic planning initiatives for this year. So congratulations to everybody. Thanks to Jessica and Fred for your work on, particularly Jessica, for her work on getting this put together. And we will let you know, board members, that we, of course, have consulted the HR department for their feedback. We're also, we've also approached both of the junior and senior associations, the HRPA and the SOA, to get their feedback as well, because we feel that their participation is essential. Lisa.
Chair, just since you did make comments on the item after the vote, I would add that the cost of the survey is $11,255, just to put that into context for anyone who might be watching.
Yes, thank you. Which is actually a very good price, but it's for this kind of work, it's really excellent.
Well, we're just going to toot our own horn.
Yeah, exactly. Let's toot our own horn. Okay, that's been moved. Did I call the vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Moving on to 4.6, this is a referral from the Regional Council. Regional councillors, you will remember this. This is a motion that was made in support of automated technology to address traffic safety concerns, or ASC cameras. This is really an information item, but it's we're looking for endorsement of this recommendation to go to the province and to the various members or the various individuals who this is being circulated to through the region. Any questions or comments on this at all? We thoroughly vetted at the region, but those who weren't there. Nadine?
Just a question. What kind of cameras are these?
These are the automatic speed enforcement cameras. I don't think Burlington's deployed them yet, but Oakville has. You have?
What are they?
The speed cameras, ASD cameras.
We do not have any physical speed cameras.
Okay. So Oakville does. I don't know about Milton.
We paused it. We were about to, but we paused it.
Okay. But just the background, the province has decided that, even though it was their program initially, they've decided that they want to ban them in Ontario. And so this is basically a motion to say, don't ban them, they actually make sense, and the public's actually on side with keeping them, so other than people who've got tickets. 100% of them don't want them. Any comments from command team on this?
Speechless.
You are?
I think they're finished no matter what, and I think they do slow people down. I think there's some administrative issues with them where they're set too low in some circumstances. They do cause us some issues on the operational side because police cars sometimes have to go over the speed limit, and we automatically receive notices, and then we have to go through an administrative process of justifying the officer's actions and things. So it's interesting. We can't, because it's probably going to stop anyway, there might have been other solutions, putting our, patrol vehicle license plates into the system so they would not be generating tickets, but we might not have to do any of that with the provincial decisions.
Well, we're going to try anyway.
But maybe I'd turn them all into ALPR cameras if that doesn't work.
That'd be really good.
So this is from the region.
This is the region passed this motion, which is supporting keeping the ASC cameras in place against the province's signaled intentions to kill the program. Right. So the region is basically saying, don't kill the program. It's been sent to the board for their endorsement. Motions are often sent to the board or to other municipalities or other MPs and such for their support, just to amplify the voice on this thing.
Okay. The others are doing it, so that's why we want to do it.
Not particularly.
The timing is because they're doing it, and because, but the reason is because it makes the road safe. There are some other consequences attached to it, but the bottom line is speed enforcement is a standard tool for making streets safer, right?
I've said for probably 5 years at budget presentations to regional council that the municipal government should consider speed cameras, and then they were finally able to, and now they may not be able to, so it's an interesting change.
I mean, the reason we're doing it, the reason the region is doing this, the reason we're doing it, it's like, if you spend any time as a regional councillor or around regional councillors, you'll know that probably the number one, if not in the maybe one or two top things we get calls about, is about people being upset about speeding in their neighborhoods. Speeding past school, community safety zones around schools, and just speeding in general. So this was a great way to get that under control. And it's been effective in Oakville, where we've had the cameras, in other jurisdictions. The province, for whatever reason, again, their program, their legislation to approve it, have decided they don't want it. They don't want to give municipalities that option anymore. So we're at risk now of having to roll this back. Other municipalities, we're going to roll it out, and the police chief and the police chiefs, plural, the associations actually endorsed ASC cameras as well. So the folks that have to deal with the implications of speeding are all on side with this, and frankly, so are the vast majority of the public, from what I understand from the public opinion surveys, are in favor of, because they all experience speeding in their communities. It reduces the demands on policing to constantly be answering the call for additional cars to be, doing speed traps in areas where there's high demand, these cameras are very cost effective in that regard. So that's why we're doing it, not because it's not a bandwagon thing. We would only, please vote for it only if you're in favor of promoting this, because the idea is to endorse a motion if we feel that this is the right thing to do. Samira, you have a comment?
Yes, my comment is just to highlight the other side of the argument. I know that a lot of residents do feel that this is a cash grab and that, they are wrongfully ticketed. I do stand behind the decision by Halton to pause this implementation of ASE, because I do believe there's room for improvement in how it's implemented municipality to municipality. I do support having cameras around schools because those are the areas we have most of the infractions when it comes to speeding. But beyond school hours, if the same camera is handing out speeding tickets, I don't think it's very fair. And I do understand where that side of the argument is coming from. So while I know that a blanket approach to eliminate the whole program is something up in the air, I would definitely support pausing it and revisiting it with better implementation, and especially a good look at the speed limit at which you get those tickets.
And there's no question that tweaking is essential. We've heard other people why tweaking should be considered in terms of removing emergency responders' plates from the system and avoiding that administrative burden. So there's no question that, and we're in early days in this program. Oakville was an early adopter. The other municipalities were, many were looking at us and other jurisdictions who have done this to see how the program works. I can tell you as an Oakville councillor, we've seen a significant improvement in our speed situation in the community. So, we're sold on it as a council, and the region, obviously supported this unanimously. So anyway, that's why the motion's here. Is there further comments or questions? Can I get somebody to approve or to move this motion, please? And the motion, just for the sake of people watching, is that the Halton Police Board endorse the Halton Regional Council resolution supporting the use of automated technology to address traffic safety concerns. Is there a mover for that? Nobody wants to move it. Okay.
I don't want to put it. I did not support it in council.
Interesting. Okay. I thought it was unanimous at council.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, if there's no mover, then it fails. We'll move on. Operational verbal updates. That's a bad message. Jeff? Kelly? No, nothing, Jerry. Okay. Action registry, Mr. CGO.
The annual reports, policy will be coming out in the new year. Get past the budget and I'll circulate the draft with the staff and with the management. The chief just provided the update on the CSPA. Ours is not near 100% compliance, which may drive some changes on your side too, depending on those policies. And I'll be coming up with that. I'll be providing that report next meeting. Suffice it to say, we're not compliant yet. Lots of policy work to do.
That's it. And then the addition today on the PSU matter. Okay, great. Can I get a motion to receive the action registry, please? Hopefully, so this is Ingrid and Lisa, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, receipt of public correspondence. There are some matters of public correspondence. I'll look for a motion to receive those items. Anybody? Amira and Jane, thank you, all in favor. That's carried. Is there new business to come before the board today in public session? I do not see any new business. Okay, terrific. So we're going to now move into a session closed to the public. So to the members of the public, we are moving into a session closed to the public to consider matters pertaining to identifiable individuals and the trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization, and information that Section 8 of the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act would authorize a refusal to disclose if it were contained in a record. So that's our legal reason for going into camera. I'll look for a motion to go into camera then. Thank you, Samira. Thank you, Nadeem. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, before we go into session, I just want to say thank you to those who've been watching on YouTube. We appreciate your interest in the activities of your board and this discussion today on the police budget, your tax dollars, and we always appreciate your input and feedback. If you ever have any questions or comments, feel free to send an email to chair@haltonpoliceboard.ca or any member of the Police Services Board. You're always welcome to visit our website to learn more about your Police Service Board and our activities at haltonpoliceboard.ca. So with that, I will bid you all thank you, and we'll see you in November on the 27th, I believe, is the next board meeting date. Is that correct? Yes. November 27th, our next board meeting date at 9 a.m. So with that, members of the board, we are now moving into a session closed to the public. Oh, and we'll recess. Let's give everybody a lunch break. Let's come back at 12:20 or 1:20. Okay?
There. See, I did that. The lead meeting. Sorry.